Got it?
Yeah.
All right. Good morning and welcome to the regular session of the Board of Supervisors meeting for February 18th. Michelle Walter.
Grant.
Here.
Here. Hall.
Here.
Leyland. Here. Kurtenbach.
Here. We'll take a moment of silence to reflect on today's actions. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1 on the agenda is the agenda received as proposed or as amended. So moved.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 2, public comments. This is time for folks who want to speak to an item that is not on today's agenda.
Mayor Stacy Roberts, 411 Almond Street, and I'm here back on the same corruption that has been going on. What I've been able to do since I was last here is get some cases to compare to what I'm going through and hopefully get law enforcement on the county side to do their job because there is something to be investigated. I haven't contacted the new sheriff yet, but this week I will be. So I'm here and I would like for you, one of y'all to look at what was called Operation Grey Lord. It's Operation Grey Lord. That's where a judge got 12 years in the penitentiary. Another one is the Silver Shovel in Fort Heights, Illinois. That's the Silver Shovel. These are investigations. Now what I want to go to is, like I have been saying, I was getting threatening text messages to kick my door in and nigga, we're going to put 4 in your head. Meaning 4 bullets that would kill me. That was a hate crime when I took it to Dan Tracco back then and when I took it to Tony Thompson. That's a hate crime. What I have to compare it to is FECR 256-356, where Brian Williams is right now prosecuting Tyler Hunter Young for threatening you, and he got second-degree criminal mischief, second-degree hate crime. And he said something that was really childish by telling you, nigga, go back to Africa with the gorillas. Mine threats are, nigga, we gonna kick the door in and put 4 in your head behind the case 9914612, which was when a person went in the bathroom when my daughter stuck his finger in her vagina and threatened to kill her mother. She was 11 years old. I've been to the police, the sheriff back then about it, and everything I'm talking about is documented. I've got paperwork where I have contacted them on my concerns. What I'm asking you to do is someone to look into the matters, because it's like when I mentioned what the judges are doing, in the case you will see where the judge got to 12 years, they can be held accountable for wrongdoing. When I went to report my concerns, like what you did with the guy threatening you, I got a mental case number. Mental health. I mean, they said I was threatening and coming to shoot up City Hall. I didn't own the gun, still don't. And what the judge did then was with specific intent, malicious abuse of power, and intentional wrongdoing, was to totally discredit everything I was bringing to the table on case 9914612, the kidnapping and rape, which I found my landlord at the time in Des Moines, Iowa, Jody Van Velzen, played a part in, as well as a police officer, Charles Tedesco, who is dead. And he was an active police officer. That's the person who went in the bathroom with my daughter. This is all my own investigation, so I just would imagine if the police went to looking into it, what they would find out. They would find out quite a bit. They would find Hesse was in there, and several other police officers that were playing a part. Hesse was in the one that grabbed my son up he's 19 years old. So we're going back some years, and he had my son in the garage and roughed him up, as well as Myers. Not Myers roughing him up, but Myers, the part he played out here in the streets. That's where you can look into the Silver Shovel. Silver Shovel was the police chief, and 6 other policemen got arrested for drug dealing and all kind of corrupt stuff they were doing. These matters need to be looked into. I'm going to contact the sheriff. Brian Williams has not been doing his job at half, but He's doing a good job for you. But when they're threatening to kill my grandchildren, he's not even having the police look into it. It's like I'm nobody. I am somebody and very special to my Heavenly Father. So it's not me that's going to run around doing wrong, but you're not going to have good luck playing against this. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I am Forrest Dillaboo, 1725 Huntington Road, lifetime resident of Black Hawk County. Each year I send a check for my taxes. Those taxes are shared between the county, the city, the schools, and so on. Across the street, those folks have found a way to take the lion's share of my tax dollar and spend it as they deem correct. One of those ways is called TIF, tax increment financing. I call it take it from. They take it from me, they take it from you, and they take it from the schools. And they then do what they want with it. They've now found a new way over there last night. They bonded against the TIF income. So they're selling bonds. And one of the things they're doing with it is putting up $6.2 million to trade the city hall for the old Courier building. They're giving that developer $6.2 million. And my understanding is he can take that 6.2, put it in the bank and draw interest on it. And down the road, he has like 4 or 4.5 years to start making improvements on that building. If he doesn't, my mind, he can walk away, take the interest off that $6.2 million and have it. Down the street, they incentivized a grocery store, which everybody in Waterloo and Black Hawk County knows about. They saw fit to give that developer $2.5 million, non-refundable. It's gone. That developer was only able to stay in business a few months and has now since walked and has not paid the taxes on the building. So the taxpayers like me and you were getting no return on that $2.5 million. You folks, I don't know what you can do to help control that type of spending. So far, you folks only take care of my county's share of the taxes. And in the past, you've done good. You've had some funds that you didn't spend. You lose money borrowing money. There's no way around it. You just got less to spend and less projects to pay for when you borrow money because you're giving the interest away. I learned that years ago. I haven't borrowed money in years. Please take care of our tax dollars. Do the best you can and watch those other folks who are spending our tax dollars and try and put a control on this TIF spending and what the city is doing across the street. Thank you. Have a great day.
Do you have anyone else in the room or online to speak on public comments? Seeing none, we'll move to item 3, claims and payments. It's a resolution of the Board of Supervisors to approve expenditures. The county auditor be authorized and directed to issue payments against the various settlements of such claims as allowed.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Reed.
Good morning, everybody. Our total bill payment today will be $509,324.84, and we are paying $790.58 from the 60/40 fund. We don't have too many unusual payments today. We are making some small payments on our courthouse renovation projects to Modus, Marco for the Ward AV, and Envision Architecture. And we are paying $21,683.43 for election workers. I don't know if that's all of them, but that's probably a large chunk for the January election. We're also making payments again on the Cedar Valley Nature Trail and some of the courthouse upgrades out of the ARPA fund. That totals $185,307.65, and that's really all the large ones we have today. Do we have any questions? Everything appears to be in order.
We have a motion and a second for the resolution. Michelle.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Kurttenbach,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes. Item 4, project, receive project updates from department heads or elected officials.
Good morning, Board. Kathy Nicholas, Blackhawk County Engineer. Just a quick update on the roads. The gravel roads have not been totally plowed out yet. We do anticipate finishing that today. When it is this cold, we are moving pretty slow. Hydraulic lines tend to freeze up, and equipment is, of course, more breakable when it is this cold. So we do anticipate taking a few more hours today to finish up the gravel road plowing. So please be patient with us. I did just want to mention one other thing. Yesterday, we held our local road safety plan workshop, and we had very good turnout from the sheriff's office, the health department, social media person, as well as the city of Waterloo and Waterloo Police Department, and the Farm Bureau. The purpose was to update our plan. We do have a plan that was put together in 2019, and we focus on the engineering aspects, enforcement, education, emergency response, and then everyone, how we can all work together to improve roadway safety is what we're all working for here. That's our common goal. The DOT has paid for the consultant to go to all the 99 counties, 97 counties actually, and have them either get a new local road safety plan, an update, or else an entirely new plan that they never had one before. Iowa's been very progressive in this area. This consultant has about 200 clients that they're working on these local road safety plans for throughout the nation, and 97 of us are here in Iowa. So the outcome of this plan is that we will be given the top 10 segments, curves, and intersections in our county to work on. And we will use this to make our 5-year plan, make our future plans. To receive to receive federal funding, I've talked to you about SSA4 money, SS4A money, which is through a federal grant, the Safe Streets for All federal grant. I think I've talked to you about that. Those grants have been hard to get, so we have not received any federal funds to date. But we are eligible to receive some local money, some state money, state transportation improvement, safety funding that we can reference the plan. And then, of course, we do look at the plan every year as we put together our 5-year plan of projects ways to improve safety on our segments, our roadways, and our intersections and our curves. So if you're interested in more of the outcome of this, I can certainly speak to you about this in the future. Can I answer any questions at this time?
Does that plan get published anywhere?
No. I mean, it's certainly available to the public. I can certainly give it out. We do receive it electronically, but we don't publish it. We can reference it on our website, for example.
I think we all received an email yesterday too, wasn't it, on the training? Have a copy of it, and a review of what was presented yesterday, I think.
Kathy, does that also include when they're doing potholes, using that tar and gravel mix? Is that part of that plan?
So not specifically, that would be more of a maintenance procedure, but of course, eliminating potholes is going to allow us to have safer roads. Bicyclists, motorcyclists, for example, do not obviously want to encounter any potholes. Pedestrians, and of course, everyday drivers don't want to encounter any potholes. That's more of a maintenance item. We're of course, focusing on how to spend our dollars, our limited dollars, on improving the roadway safety through, for example, one thing that we've adopted now has been 6-inch pavement markings, the rumble strips, the longitudinal rumble strips on the edge lines, wider pavements, 2-foot wider pavements over a 12-foot 11-foot, 12-foot lane has primarily been what's historically been built, but we're trying to, on our larger volume roadways, to put in 13 or 14-foot lanes. So all those countermeasures, we call them, add to the safer roadway.
As a motorcycle enthusiast, I always find it hard when they use
gravel tar mix. It's like trying to stop on marbles. If there's a way of trying to eliminate or reduce that during stop signs or take off areas, that would be very helpful.
Good morning, Board. Mike Hendrickson, Director of Blackhawk County Conservation. Just one quick announcement for those that are attending the strategic planning this afternoon. Let's all pull down by the building. We'll do some creative parking. It's too cold to walk down that hill or back up it when we're done. So if I have to direct traffic, I will, but we can get those cars down there. So maybe that will improve attendance too.
I said it, 'cause I was gonna do it anyway, so.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah, some of you are, thank you.
Yeah, I don't have good news like that. Caitlin Emmerich, Public Health Director for Blackhawk County Public Health. I just have a couple of updates for the board that I presented to our January Board of Health meeting. And I want to just bring a couple to your attention. From a communicable disease perspective, we have recently received updates from the state of Iowa on avian flu. We kind of went through a dry spell of updates, but did get some updates recently on kind of guidance for the public. Luckily, migratory bird activity has pretty much stopped, so that's a good thing in terms of the spread within the animal population. But they do expect that when in the springtime, when the birds start to migrate again, then activity will tick up again. The reason why it's a public health concern is because it's a zoonotic disease, which means it's transmitting from human to, or from animal to human, and so therefore we're paying pretty close attention to that. So if you guys hear of any questions, concerns, things like that, feel free to send them over to us at Public Health. We do have just very basic guidance, like not handling dead birds if you find them and that kind of stuff. Also from our communicable disease section, we recently launched a vaccines for adults campaign. This is supported by the state of Iowa through their Health and Human Services Department. This allows individuals that are uninsured or underinsured that are over the age of 19 to receive vaccines. This is a program that we've not traditionally had before. We've traditionally had vaccines for children programs for a very long time to allow access to vaccines, but not for adults. There is a page on our website at bhcpublichealth.org that talks about the Vaccines for Adult program, what the eligibility criteria are, and the vaccines that are provided. So I just wanted to draw attention to that. Also from our disease surveillance and investigation program, we are, our action plan is underway for our overdose prevention data to action grant. And we're currently looking for 2 champions to serve as leadership partners for a partnership between public health and safety sectors for overdose prevention. So we're looking for 1 representing health and 1 representing public safety. So I just want to spread the word on that. If you have any recommendations or would like to refer someone, you can let myself know or Sarah, our disease surveillance program manager, know. From our community health perspective, our First 5 program, which is the care coordination program for children under the age of 5, we recently were audited from HHS and scored very well on our audit in terms of documentation standards and kind of compliance. So that's great news. Also on our child health grant, our Informing program, which is Care for Your Kids, which that's newly Medicaid eligible children and families. We contact them to let them know of what is covered, their benefits. We've reached 50% of our families this month, which is above the state of Iowa average and is high for us in the last couple of years. So I'm very proud of our team for working on that. January was Radon Awareness Month, so if you didn't get your radon kit to test your home for radon, you still can. They're $12 at the public health building. We had quite a heavy social media presence and outreach events in January, so I just wanted to say it's not too late. I'm sure your home is still closed up for the winter, so you can still do a radon test. From a planning perspective, with our community health improvement and community health assessment and community health improvement efforts, We did, in collaboration with Mercy One, People's Community Health Clinic, and Unity Point, we convened a community input meeting, which included 73 partners on January 14th as part of our community health improvement process, and prioritized some issues that can then move forward into our community health improvement plan. So more to come on that. And I think those are my highlights for kind of our January update. Are there any questions for me on any of those things?
Not on those in particular. Question on federal dollars. What's the state, or are you, any updates?
No updates on federal dollars. So the board did receive a communication earlier in January about the potential impact of federal dollars. So about 1/3 of our revenue is federal funds. And so we're monitoring that very closely, but we have not received any communication from any of our pass-through funders that where we get federal funds that anything has changed with our revenue. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other department heads or elected officials, either in the audience or online, that want to speak? Seeing none, we'll move to item 5, minutes approval for the February 11th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Item 6, consent agenda, resolution, without separate discussion, unless someone from the board requested an item.
Move to approve.
Second.
So, resolution, Michelle Walton.
Leyland,
Yes.
Kurttenbach,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes. Item 7A, resolution that the lowest responsible bid received from Global Traffic Services of Orange City, Iowa, for project L7625 pavement working in Blackhawk County with a total bid of $185,437.54, with the engineer's estimate being at $204,421.20, be awarded and direct the chair to sign a resolution authorizing the county engineer to sign the contract and to receive and place on file the contract with bond and certificate of insurance as recommended by Catherine Nicholas, county engineer.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second.
Yeah, this contract covers our annual pavement marking contract. We normally are doing the pavement markings in the spring of the year so that we get many months of service before winter sets in. So this is coming out of our FY25 budget, and we did budget $220,000 for this item in our secondary road fund. If you recall, last Tuesday, bids were opened in the boardroom. We did receive 6 bids. Global Traffic Services is our low bidder. So I would recommend that you award the bid to them. We did just use them a couple years ago and we did good work. Had no problems, no issues with their work, so I would recommend that you award the contract to them.
So resolution, Michelle Walter, please.
Kurttenbach,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes. 7B is a resolution that the change order received from Peters Construction for the multi-department remodel project in the amount of $1,701.40, which includes an increase amount of $1,906.40 to cover the remodel of a portion of a wall to improve sight lines of staff in the treasurer's office, and reduce the amount of $205 for the removal of cabling in the basement be approved, and for the chair to sign for same as recommended by Rory Gibbon, facilities director.
So moved.
Good morning, Board. Rory Giving, Facilities Director. This change order is for a revision on the service counter. We're actually going to be adjusting the height of a wall in a particular section of the project just to improve the line of sight for the staff there. Any questions on that?
Second.
Silence.
Two. I've been waiting for the opportunity to say it loud. I just thought, I'll say.
Very good. Appreciate it. I'm assuming that'll be as departments continue to make that ADA compliant counter,
This-
that'll just be kept in mind as we make other.
Yeah, this is actually, has to do with just a line of sight barrier, not so much the ADA factor of it, but yeah, as we do these projects, that's definitely something we do incorporate into them.
Thank you. This is a resolution, Michelle, will you please?
Grant.
Yes.
Schwartz.
Yes.
Leyland.
Yes.
Kurttenbach.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes. It's a resolution, the change order received from Young Plumbing and Heating Company for the jail BAS control upgrade and kitchen HVAC improvements project be approved, reflecting a decrease of $2,972 due to the discovery of a variable frequency drive that was not needed, that the chair be directed to sign for the same as recommended by Rory Giving, Facilities Director.
So moved.
Second.
This one's kind of exciting because it doesn't happen very often, but no, during the design, these two variable frequency drives got put into the project. These were actually drives that were updated back when we did a boiler project not too long ago, so we didn't see the need to replace them under this project, so we just asked for them to be taken off.
This is a resolution. Roll call, please, Michelle.
Schwartz.
Yes.
Leyland.
Yes.
Kurttenbach.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes. Item 8A, resolution to approve the road department to collect a $50 fee for the establishment of an adopt a road sign prairie permit and a $25 fee for each additional sign over two, which shall give landowners permission to establish and maintain a roadside prairie as recommended by Cliff Kapolka, Weed Commissioner.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, yeah, so this project was kind of our pilot program that we went through last year, just showing kind of the process. This just basically covers a working in the right-of-way permit with a little bit of prairie maintenance guidance for the landowner. In your packet there, basically will show everything that landowner will get when they basically want to enroll in this project that they would be taking on. I'll give them, the first page would be on our website underneath of the Your County roadsides, basically a brief synopsis of what roadside prairie entails of, and then also just simple maintenance. And then from there, the landowner will get the permit if they want to go forth with it. They will also get a maintenance standard that I follow for our own prairies and the roadsides, and then also a burn plan if they so choose to burn on their own. So that's something that's kind of specific and is all good information for that landowner. And then I was just going to kind of go through a little bit of just what the Adopt a Roadside Prairie pilot program has kind of sparked. I think it's a little more than 6 now. I think it's right around 8 or 9 landowners that are enrolled with this program, roughly about 2.5 acres. Generally, it's in front of one's home. So, you know, you're not getting a lot of acreages out of this, but you're promoting a whole, something that the county does in the roadsides. What the RVM program will do, the roadside program will do, is we will spray it out for them, and then we'll do the tillage and seeding for them, just because sometimes landowners don't have the capable means of that equipment that we do have. The landowner will maintain this prairie. I mean, only a couple of guys in this line of work, so trying to maintain what we do on top of the county roadsides, plus these. This is a good way to get the public involved in our roadsides in our program. So year 1, they'll do a couple mowings to keep the weed seed down. In year 2, they'll do at least 1 mowing, and then year 4 or 5, they'll do a prescribed burn if they're capable of doing that. And this is kind of just the establishment process that happens. This is actually at Lori Worm's house. You can just see the progression of, we went in the fall, we sprayed it. I came back 3-4 weeks later, it was completely dead. And then in the spring, I came and planted it. Then as I went, we planted oat nurse crop with it, so that greens it up really quick. And then by the end of summer, she was already getting floral in there, which is really good for her first year of seeding. So that's just a little bit of the process that happens and what a landowner goes through. And actually, with a good establishment as they had, they only actually mowed it once. So it just depends. And all these landowners are, I leave my contact information on all this stuff. So if they have technical questions or things like that, or pictures, they're always more than welcome to send me a picture or have me come out, depending on what I'm doing. So yeah, that's just a little bit about the process. And the fee is just to charge for our signage that we put up there. So that covers a sign, 2 signs and 2 posts, one on each end of the area of interest. So questions?
I think it's a great program, right?
Yeah, it's starting to take off, and so we figured we should probably get something in place so people are, with insurance and hold and harmless, things like that, or we're all covered.
I guess one question, do you have just one seed blend that you use, or do you choose from?
Yeah, no, so every year we get our, the Tallgrass Prairie Center sends in a federal grant to fund all the IRVM programs throughout the state of what you would need for seed each year. So you can choose from a clean out mix, which is not very many flower species and grass species, to a diversity mix. And the diversity mix is what we get, and that's over 70 some species of grasses and forbs. So I try to get as much out there as we can for each individual person or species that we house here in the county can utilize. So I think that's important.
Awesome. Thank you.
Questions?
Any more questions for Griffin? All right, this is a resolution. Commissioner Walter, please.
Leyland.
Yes.
Kurttenbach.
Yes.
Bringup.
Yes.
Schwartz.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes. All right. 8B, a resolution to approve the road department to establish a living snow fence program as recommended by Kathy Nicholas, County Engineer.
So moved.
Second.
I will, since I'm up here, I'll speak on behalf of this section of it, since I was one of the kind of trying to found this program for us. We have a pilot interest on Independence, Holgate, and Osage Road. As many of you know, the DOT has a living snow fence program, whether that be what they planted along like 63 south of Hudson, or a lot of farmers volunteer or enroll in the living corn snow fence program, and that'd be what we'd be catering to for our county roads. A lot of this we took from various states, kind of picked and choose what we thought was appropriate for what we need to accomplish our goals on retaining snow on the road. And from there, we basically just a brief synopsis of what it entails of is you have a minimum of 6 rows of corn, maximum of 16. Most crop farmers around here have 8 row heads, so if they choose to do 16 rows, it's pretty easy for them to count that out. And most have 12 row heads too, so 6 rows is not that big of an issue as well. Basically, we're starting 50 feet from the road edge, so we can retain that snow in between that zone before it hits the road, so we can keep that snow from ever building up on the road. And then for as far as our monetary amount, we'll pay each year the September 1 market price plus an additional $1 for a little bit more incentive for people to leave some corn standing. And then we'll use the tenants' prior yield data that they have on that. So they're not missing out, and we just use the state's yield, average yield. So sometimes that's lower, sometimes that may be higher. It just depends. So.
Griffin, is the corn that's still left on the stalks, is that still usable once the snow is melted?
Yes, yeah, once that is It just depends on the year. If it's a year like this year, the stalks don't have any moisture in them from all that snow being packed in there. So the stalks have more of a rigid, and they can still really combine them. But some years, if you have corn that has snow like that in there, it will decay that stalk a little faster. So it is harvestable, and they can still use that for a commodity crop, but they may have obviously some losses, and that's what we're trying to account for with just adding a little bit more incentive to it.
It still saves us having people out there putting up fence.
Yeah, which I'll get to our problem area here. This year is Independence to Holgate, that curve there, and this was last year, and we only had 2 weeks of snow, and it was a rough 2 weeks of snow. There was countless hours of that plow driver going back and forth to try and knock that back. But then also on top of that, we've had to, for many, many years, have had to rent an excavator, and that's its sole purpose, is to go out there and push these, the windrow that we push. We have to push it even further because if we get more snow, that just creates basically a snow fence, and it creates more drifting in that area. So that's Independence to Holgate Corner, and this is Holgate Road. This is the worst section, and this was probably after that whole week's worth of pushing that back and wind blowing, and so I remember going down that road, and that drift was that we pushed back, plus what we pushed back with the excavator it had to have been 6 to 8 feet tall. I mean, it's something that if we can get people to see the benefits in this and road safety, and I'm sure the people on this road would appreciate it, we will have a safer roadway. We'll use less fuel, manpower, everything on our first couple passes, because we don't have snow on the road. We don't have to rent a loader to move all that. We can negate and save a lot of money in the long run with this type of program. So.
Which pool of funding does that come from? Is that from state reimbursement or anything?
This will just come out of our budget. We budget for this every year as a line item. Currently, we've budgeted $5,000 just to start. I did a whole breakdown of how many acres, how many rows, if a quarter of them, if half of them, enlist in this, then, kind of breaking it down and trying to find a monetary amount that would work for us.
And do we target the areas, or is it sort of a?
Yes, we would target areas that are poor during the winter for conditions. So if there's, we ask the plow drivers, if this kicks off and you accept this, then we can ask the plow drivers in the future, hey, tell us your information, and we can, if this really starts to take off, we can target other areas.
What's the cost? You said the excavator. What are we looking at?
Sorry, end loader, I think rental is $1,800 a week or a little more, I want to say. We budget quite a bit of money. I think we budget roughly $8,000 to $10,000 from that. So we could be saving some money, yeah. And that's literally just for that corridor, basically.
What do the crew guys think about that?
Just mentioning it to some of the individuals that may run this route, or just others that I know have, some problem areas, I think they're on board with it. Just because, you work 5 to 5 on long snow days, consecutive days, I think that, only maybe perks their spirits up a little more with something like this, just because those are long days, long hours, and you have high drifting like that and blowing snow, it's hard to see, so I think that it only benefits them.
Have you all gauged interest of those farmers?
We sent out certified letters last 2 weeks ago, and we've had a couple of responses back of the landowners. A lot of them are older and may not farm anymore, so There's obviously tenants and agreements that they have to work through, but that's all obviously on them. But the word is out there all along the area.
Do you have any additional questions? All right. This is a resolution. Michelle Walter, please.
Brant,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Kurttenbach,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes. This is a resolution that the letter of support for the IRBM program to apply for a grant from the Iowa Living Road Trust Fund to purchase brush and wood chipper be approved, and the chair directed to sign for same as recommended by Griffin, Cabalco Weed Commission.
So moved.
Second.
I'm just applying for a grant to update some of our equipment within the secondary roads, and wood chipper is something that we use heavily during this time when we don't have any snow, or except for this week when it's brutally cold out. We are able to get out and utilize that, but our current piece of equipment is from the 90s, and there's some safety features, engine common, wear and tear items that are, just getting outdated and underpowered for some of the stuff that we're doing. So we just asked a letter to help with pushing the grant through for this next fiscal year, and update our equipment and make our crews a little happier with machinery that might, run a little better than our current one, and make it easier on them.
What's the timeline of this, Griffin, as far as when the...
Sure. It is open, and submittals need to be in before June 1st. I have the grant done. It's ready to roll. I just trying to get the last pieces, and then once it's submitted, early August, they'll come together and they'll decide on who gets what for funding. And then the end of August, early September, they release the money, and you can go out for purchase and a bid, basically, and go from there. And then once that's all purchased and bought, then they obviously need all the receipts and stuff like that for their record.
Are there a lot of applicants? I mean, it probably could fluctuate every year, but I just...
Yeah, I want to say I'm actually going down to a conference here in tomorrow that will go over a lot of who was awarded and things like that this past year, but I think there's usually around 50 or 60 applications for equipment and other means for the IRBM program, and usually there's only 2 or 3 that don't get funded. So it's competitive, but what year and how many grants you send, so it all depends. But yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, this is a resolution. Yep, resolution.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Kurttenbach,
Yes.
Brant,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes. Item 8D, a motion that the travel request be approved and direct the chair to sign for same for $4,070 for lodging, meals, airfare, and mileage expenses for Gabby DeWitt, marketing coordinator, to attend the TCU Certified Public Communicator Program in Fort Worth, Texas, scheduled for July 20th.
Yes.
So moved. Second.
Hi, Gabby DeWitt, Marketing Coordinator. Just here to answer any questions. I was able to apply for and get a scholarship that covered half of the tuition. The tuition does cover the 2 years, so we won't pay that in July of 26. That covers the whole 2 years, but I will have travel costs in 26. And my plan is to pay for the tuition and probably flight now, and I have that in my current budget, and then the rest of the travel would be in the actual fiscal year 26.
Any particular reason you're applying for it this time of year? It's freezing here and it's Texas trip and...
Well, I like to do this mental game with myself when I think like how cold it is. I'm going to think about how hot I'm going to be in Texas in July. And then in Texas in July, I'm going to be thinking, man, if only I could be as cold as I was in January when I applied. So, yeah, it has its own challenges.
Don't be fooled, they have family down there and they've had more snow than we had until this week.
Fair, yes.
All right, any other questions? This is a motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Great, thank you.
Item 8E, a resolution to designate the submitted named financial institutions as 2025 depository for Blackhawk County funds in conformance with all applicable provisions of 12B and 12C of Iowa, Code of Iowa, in amounts not to exceed the maximum approved for each respective financial institution submitted.
So moved.
Second?
Just here if you have any questions. The only change was we increased the health department's Farmer State Bank from 10,000 to 15,000. That was the only change.
Can I ask how you pick which facility to put funds in? Is there any kind of rhyme or reason to?
These are the ones that have already been established. So, these were established before I came into the role. So if we wanted to, we could, if there's another bank that we wanted to use, we could reach out to them and then I'd come to you with a depository resolution.
And some do that. I was gonna say, we have over the years added different ones. It seems like at certain times that people have requested us adding them and you guys consider.
And some change the names of the banks too, so we have to update it at that time as well.
Now, do we pretty much, we gain interest in these dollars as they're invested then?
We do. We have CDs that we invest in, we have money markets, we also have iPay, and then we get interest on our regular checking account as well.
It just seemed to me, I would have thought we'd had more money in some of the local banks. I understand the interest rates jump around in facilities. But I was kind of surprised we didn't have more dollars in some of our local facilities here in the community, in the county.
I think most of them are local. Like they might say, and some of these too, we don't currently have money in, but we have them as a list. So if we wanted to, we could at the time.
Okay.
So like we send out bids for CDs and I have a list of all the banks and I send those. And so maybe currently we don't have a CD with the bank. And so we don't actually have funds with the bank, but at least we still have the list. So then we're ready if they are the winning bid on that CD. So just because we have them listed doesn't mean we have money in all these banks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a resolution. Please.
Leyland,
Yes.
Kurttenbach,
Yes.
Bryant,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes. Item 8F, motion that the appointments to the respective boards serving as representative of the Board of Supervisors be approved for the FY, for the year 2025.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or?
So we're in need of a alternate for the Northeast Iowa Response Task
Yes,
Force? Okay.
yes.
Yeah, so that's the Northeast Iowa Hazmat Response Group. I believe that Frank Maxman established that when he was still fired with the fire department, actually. But it meets quarterly. The meetings are less than an hour, but it's really just mostly budget oversight, approving expenditures for trainings that all the different participating counties are going into. It's made up of county supervisors, there's some emergency management personnel as well from the different counties, and representation from the fire department.
That's helpful. You said quarterly, and those when you.
Yeah, quarterly, and the meetings typically last less than an hour.
When do they meet?
I believe,
There's
top of my
eight
head,
quarters.
I think it was Thursday afternoon, but it sometimes changes. You usually set the next meeting at the end of the current meeting.
Anybody want to volunteer? That's kind of where we're at, just looking at the list and saying that's the only one we haven't finalized yet.
We're looking for an alternate on that one?
Yeah, just as an alternate.
I certainly will too, if he doesn't want.
Yeah, put me down for it.
I always had, those meetings are, since we're, the meeting meetings are here. Yeah.
Not in this location, but.
No, they're out at the training
Okay, super. Got it. Great, thank
All
you.
right, full list.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, well, we've got a motion and a second on these. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 8G, resolution to approve amending to the agenda item procedure previously approved on July 5th, 22, and amended on August 2nd, 22, to include the following additional positions authorized to submit agenda items requested. Assistant County Engineer, Assistant IT Director, Facilities Operations Manager, Financial and Accounting Manager, Fiscal Coordinator for Roads Department, Marketing Coordinator, Public Health Deputy Director.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Showalter, please.
Leyland,
Yes.
Kurttenbach,
Yes.
Bring
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes. All right. Item 9, work session. Discussion, possible board action, consideration of all aspects of the FY26 Blackhawk County budget. Ms. Regan.
Good morning, everybody. Up first today, we have representatives here from the Blackhawk County Soil Conservation District who want to discuss their budgetary request. So we have Jerry Thornsberry, who I believe is the chair, and Vern Fish, who I believe is the treasurer.
Good morning, I'm Vern Fish and the chair.
Jerry Thornsberry.
If, Mr. Chair, can I approach, I have some items, some materials to hand out, if that's all right, thank you. And Justin, can I get you to be my distributor?
Yes, sir.
You would do that for me, please?
Get one of each, right?
The white copy that's coming around is sort of an outline for our budget proposal. We are asking for $10,000. One of the beauties of what we do is you give us a nickel, we'll rub it together and we'll come up with $1. Well, we do a lot of matching and leveraging money from other sources. Some of the items that are listed on there are cover crops at Hawkeye Community College. We have a partnership with the college. We also have a banquet, and the term banquet is probably not the right word because it's really an educational event. We'll have over 100 people coming. We have keynote speakers that are highly recognized from across the country that will show up. We also recognize our partners, and Mr. Hendrickson's still in the back row. Mr. Hendrickson's organization is one of our partners because we work with conservation reserve programs, and those landowners have a heck of a time finding people to do the work for them, to do the planning and do the maintenance and provide the advice. And Mike and his staff have played a major role in helping us put crops onto CRP ground that we provide funding for. You'll also notice in the newsletter that I've handed out, there's a photograph that shows one of our interns, and that's another thing that we do in partnership with Northern Iowa, with Hawkeye Community College, Upper Iowa. We have interns that come through our program. The young lady that's involved in that particular photograph was actually one of my students. I'm an adjunct at Hawkeye. I got to take her on a wilderness canoe trip, and it was kind of interesting for her to have that transition from wilderness paddling to working on conservation reserve projects. Some other funding costs are website. We have a rain garden demonstration plot we want to put together. We also are putting some materials together to help people understand who we are. To be honest, most people don't know who the Soil and Water Conservation District is. Even though we are elected officials, we go through the same process that you do. We're just on the back side of the ballot, and most people don't recognize it. So we're trying to tell that story. That's the other also the piece of the banquet is an important part of telling our story. We have asked for $10,000. We are working with Michelle to figure out how to move that money from your budget to our budget. The budget you see here, a lot of these items will be spent in fact, we've actually spent about $3,000 this year, and we're trying to work with Michelle to figure out how to make that transition. But a lot of these projects will carry into the 26 year. So this kind of overlaps. It kind of covers what we're going to spend this year, also is kind of what we're looking at doing next year. The thing that I believe that Linda has is is the flyers of all the projects that we've done, all the partnerships that we have. We're one of the best kept secrets in the county. We work with landowners to protect the soil health and maintain the soil. And probably as important as anything else, we work with landowners for water quality, particularly in the Middle Cedar, which is the watershed that we work with. My background is in resource management. It makes me feel good to see the CRP ground that's going out there, work with This young man here helped burn some CRP ground that I'm actually managing. So it is a partnership, and we really appreciate the funding we've got in the past. We appreciate the opportunity to ask for the $10,000 and look forward to working with Michelle to make that money move our way. With that, I'll hand this over to my boss and let Jerry speak.
Thank you, Bert. I wanted to just kind of pull focus on what happened from the last time we were here in January. And in January of '24, we asked for $10,000. We've been receiving $2,000 for years and years and years. And in that year, we put in conservation practices valued at $966,000. This past year, with funding from the federal government and a lot of work from commissioners, our staff was going full out, and some of us commissioners were in the office helping out. $2.9 million of conservation practices in Black Hawk County.
Which flows across our desk, which we review and approve.
Absolutely. And that has happened throughout all of Iowa. I'm privileged to serve as the president of the Conservation Districts of Iowa. We have 500 elected commissioners in 100 districts, East Pot, West Pot too. So throughout the state of Iowa, there has been tremendous effort in the conservation practice installation world, and it's needed given our severe weather events. Drought, floods, high winds, no winds. I mean, this has been crazy. You know, the farmers are the biggest gamblers in the world. I mean, they could go toe to toe with those guys in Las Vegas for the work that they do. So we really appreciate the support that we get from the county, and we make it happen. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for being our partners.
You bet.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yep.
Keep up the excellent work.
All righty.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, and there is an invitation to the banquet in that file that came around. Oh, thank you.
Yes.
All right. That was probably the fun part of today's discussion. Yep. I don't really have much for new material today. Distributed most everything to go. So just a really quick review. Property tax askings, our general basic levy, we are over the legal limit by $407,533. And that assumes that we will reduce costs from basically vacant positions of $1 million. So potential use of 1.4 million if we had full employment day one, which, you know, may not be realistic, but we'd like to think someday we'll do that. And so I think other highlights of this first draft that you've seen shows a reduction in collection for the rural basic levy, and part of that is due to going back to trying to just use a 75-25 split on the patrol deputies. So in previous years, we had coded 75% of those patrol deputies to the rural fund. Last year, we did move it up to 80. Wanted to see what would happen at 75, and I mean, I think you can see there's a certainly negative impact to the general basic fund when we do that. So but there is room under here. Then our last basic levy is really the debt service, and as we've talked about, the board did approve issuing bonds last spring. We are waiting to do it 2 years at a time to save some money in bond issuance costs. That will take a bump this year, cause our collections to rise. But after that, I think, you know, unless the board makes decisions that I'm not aware of today, even with being able to construct the road maintenance building in a few years, I think we will be able to keep that debt service fairly level over the next number of years, depending on what other decisions are made by the board. That does result in an increase of total collections of 4.5% today. And we are not, obviously we're not done yet. I have now added things like secondary roads, local option. So all the projects that Griffin spoke to you about today all come out of the secondary roads fund. That is primarily funded by road use taxes, so it's not general fund at all, not property taxes at all. Although the county does transfer approximately $1 million into the secondary roads fund annually. I don't know that there's anything much to talk about in some of these other funds. They're just our capital that we anticipate. None of those have a direct impact on property taxes.
Well, the change that you did from, you said the 80-20 or the 75-25 and 80-20 that you made for this adjustment. Could you explain that just a little bit of why you did that, or what brought you to that being better for us, I guess, how that's done a little bit?
Sure. So I'm switching to the third document, the budget adjustments. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I did do to help with that $400,000 gap in the general fund is I went back to the 80-20 split on the patrol deputies. And what that does, you can see on line 4, they're numbered below, that will add almost $127,000 in expenses to the rural fund levy, but it will remove $86,845 from the general basic levy, so it's reducing that $407,000 gap. And some of that we account for employee benefits for the general fund under the general supplemental levy. So you can see on here there's a reduction of $39,964 in the general supplemental column, which is the second column. So the total reduction to the general is the $126,809 that's being added to rural. And yeah, obviously the patrol deputies are out in the county. We think it's justifiable that their salaries be charged that way and a portion of fuel. That's all that we're proposing at this time. And that may be further adjustments you may want to talk about. Other adjustments that I have made on this schedule, if you remember when we talked about the community funding agencies, I was asked to include the $25,000 for the Cattle Congress fair marketing. So I've added that. I've also increased the budget for the elected officials based on the recommendation from Human Resources. I had already built in 3% pay increases for everyone. That was the equivalent to what the non-bargaining group's getting. This increases it mostly to 10%, with the exception of one position was recommended at 5%. So that is how much it would take to bring all those up to that recommendation. And that's really all that I attempted to adjust at this point. I think that's all that we've actually talked about. So in terms of what I would call good fiscal management, I think it's a good idea to bring the amount right now as it sits at $463,325. That amount really you do want to be zero. Because we should be trying to be sustainable. We should be trying to have our revenues match our expenses each year. And unfortunately, our property tax base did not grow enough to allow that this year. And I probably sound a bit like a broken record, but I do want to point out that 463 without House File 17 would have been $213,000 less, because that's where House File 17 starts to hit us, 718, I'm sorry. That's where it begins to have a direct impact on the services we provide.
So in your numbers, on these other categories that you had talked about as making a decision, or at least having more discussion about where some of those, and those are not built into your budget at all at the moment.
No, we can go down this list. So changes in funding for the libraries. I had left that in at last year's level because we really hadn't discussed what the board wants to do with that this year. That is paid from the rural levy. So at least if you want to have more taxes, you can at least do it. That's the advantage. If it were out of the general basic fund, we would have to be trading dollar for dollar, right, with something else. So if you choose to increase it, I believe you'll have enough funding to do that. I just wasn't sure what the board's desire was with that.
When you say increase, it, you mean increase in the 12%? The 12% is what you put in?
Well, I put, actually, for 26, it's a 0% increase. I plugged in the same dollar right now that we put in last year, okay? So right now, there would be no increases to the libraries based on what's here. That 12% was over the past, well, that's what they requested for fiscal 25, which will be just slightly lower than that because one of the libraries wasn't meeting the contractual requirement. And I don't know what year this started, I assume many years. We have had a requirement in the contract that the library, that we don't contribute more than 50% of what that local community contributes for its library in terms of tax support. And we had one community that was hit by that. I can, yes. Here's the library funding history.
And just look at it on screen.
It's, yeah, a lot easier. I should have already done that. Yeah. So there's your 10-year history. And as I said, I have plugged in the 201. Again, it'll be slightly lower than that because of the issue with the one community. But approximately would be at that level. We had done a lot to increase our contribution to try to get toward the state average over the last 3 years. So that's why you see pretty substantial increases in 23, 24, and 25. And the lower half of this worksheet, I tried to give just some suggestions of what you could do. A 3% increase, for example, what it would do, 6% and 10%. And so the dollar amounts, a 3% increase would be an additional $6,000. 6% would be $12,109. 10% would jump you to $20,182. And I tried to rough out what the per capitas would be based on the last official census. So, and unfortunately, the community that wasn't funding 50% will cut their budget slightly, so they're still we're going to have to reduce our total unless you choose to change the contract provisions, which that's something else you could consider. I was starting to do some research on some of the other counties. For fiscal 25, Black Hawk County is, even with those 3 increases, we were ranked 12th in the state for the level of funding to the counties. And I hadn't gotten too much further with that yet.
I know there was a question asked about how the other communities are providing funding.
Yes.
I don't know if someone was providing that or you were supposed to provide. I mean, how?
Well, so this worksheet, so these are the 24 statistics from the library. So this is actually what each of them funded in fiscal 24, because that's what we base our 26 budget on. But you can see the city tax appropriation here, about, I don't know, a third of the way down the page, ranging anywhere, I think the lowest is Dunkerton at $54,488. The highest is Waterloo at just under 2.79 million, 2.729 million.
I'm looking for percentages. I'm curious about percentages, how we figure those.
There, I can do some more research or whatever you'd like to know.
Well, today we just kind of needed some numbers to plug in so that you can look at some scenarios and then we can go up or down or whatever.
Yep, exactly.
In their report, they were saying they needed a 7.6% to achieve the state average.
Yeah, you made some we've made some good strides to get to that state average, which of course will then go up as we increase our funding.
Any thoughts? As far as, I mean, because if we're just plugging in numbers to see where we come, we can always adjust, but is there any thought on where you?
I mean, theoretically, I don't want to outpace the increase the communities have made. But that said, when trying to take a bite of apples, this is a grape. The biggest bite for me is our general basic, and try to figure that one out, since this is all on a rural. As big of a focus for me is trying to figure out how we come up with our new magic number of 463. You said it would have been 213.
That would be reduced by 213, so, yeah,
Would have been 250.
250. Yeah.
463 because of an imaginary line in the sand.
Yep.
And you weren't looking for us to give you any numbers, we were, for capital improvements at least at time. Not that we can't still ask questions and budgets and scrutinize, but those weren't the cuts you're looking for. You wanted to focus.
Again, those obviously don't really affect that general fund gap number at all. And they won't, depending on what you do. Like, for example, if you said not funding any capital this year, yeah, that's enough money that could make a difference in the debt service levy. But it is less of a hit to your annual taxes, right? It still, it is a hit over time, there's no question of that, I don't want to think that. But I think the most critical things for us to do is, yes, look, as Davis said, figure out what we want to do about that general basic levy. And look, I think focus on our other operating levies, and we definitely do need to look at capital. I just don't think it's quite as urgent or critical, maybe.
With the deputy change, where is that have the rural levy at right now then?
The rural levy, if you look, scroll down to the bottom of that budget adjustments handout, that puts it at 374.
Okay.
That cap is 395.
So if we do something with the libraries, that would bump it up a little higher.
It would. Yep.
Yeah, I guess, I'm supportive of the change to 80%. I'm supportive of going even higher. I had questions when we made that change a number of years ago to start funding part of that, because I guess I look at it that, the city residents pay for the city police, which rural residents absolutely benefit from, but there's no mechanism for them to have to pay for that, so it's kind of the trade-off. So I think that should be closer to 100%.
And I'll add that I think as we look at vehicle maintenance, which pouring through that, I think was about 80,000, that sounds about right. It would seem logical if we're taking gas at an equal percentage, the salaries, to also take some portion of vehicle maintenance at the same rate.
Well, those are the kinds of scenarios to look at.
It stands up to reason, I think.
Kind of like a different, for the higher percentage.
Yeah.
So what's your goal if, not meaning keep seeing what progress or whatever we decide on today to give you for numbers so that you can present to us and come back with some scenarios.
Yep, yeah, I will, based on
So that you can make some.
Well, I'd like to put out there that libraries, at least at this point, it may be at 6%, but I'd like to at least look at doing it 7.6, see what it looks like on here before we do the final.
Yeah, I'd like to see the scenario.
Yeah.
I want to see us closer to this date, and we made a good stride last year to get closer, but if we don't
keep
it up, then we'll lose that.
So that gives you about three scenarios then, 6, 7, 6, and 12. Is that what you're thinking
Yeah.
when you say that? I don't, Michelle?
I can do that.
The other one on the list was township trustees pay. Meeting with Tim Jameson a couple of times, asking about this. He made a recommendation, and I didn't see it on there, but it was to move that up from $10 a meeting, that per diem, to $20.
So,
follow through with that.
yeah, and the budget we did, that reason you don't see an amount on here, township trustees pay is item 12 on here. I don't have an amount on here because we did build that particular recommendation is in already.
Okay.
In the rural budget. So if you choose to adopt that, we hope we've budgeted enough.
But you'll go back and look and see what that is. That was that second option, right? It was the one in between, kind of the middle. There was 3 options.
I believe so.
The
Yeah,
second one that
and
we looked at.
The kicker is, first, the trustees have been submitting for their per diem. Will this encourage them to do more? We're still not talking large amounts of dollars, even if we did see a bump up. You want people in the rural areas to take an active interest in taking care of the townships. You gotta give them a little incentive for their time.
To be honest, my preference there would be to keep it at the old number. Keep the rate, bump the rate up, but keep the budget number low, at the former number, and then just commit to come out of reserve so that we know next year that what number we're really dealing with, as opposed to maybe this increase will, I don't want to tax folks based off of a hypothetical. If we've got the dollars in reserves to commit, we're not talking about a ton of money here, but I think it could, probably long-term, it helps us not overtax them and gauge right-size that budget on the rural side.
That comes out of which pot, Michelle?
That would be out of rural. I mean, I guess I would ask you to allow us to leave that 9,500 in there. It's not, that's not a huge amount. If we're lucky and we're on the mark, that'll cover the increase. I mean, I think Tim kind of, he had as scientific as you can be, right? When you're doing estimates. I think he tried that. Whether it works or not, I don't know. But I agree. We have some reserves in the rural fund, so if all of a sudden they all decide to submit, we will be able to afford to pay them.
Yeah, but really, like $10,000, you're right. I mean, it's kind of. And we know the clerks definitely need more for their work, and the trustees are just never taking pay for theirs.
When it's
they do. But we said too, it's hard to get people to do those jobs in those positions, and
this
would be appreciated. The rate hasn't been raised or how long? It was
Why?
20 years or
Yeah,
something.
it's a
So,
lot of years.
So I think you could have, flashed that up there and saw how embarrassing it was. No, he doesn't, maybe you didn't have that presentation.
I don't have it.
But it was like where we fared with other counties too, it just recognizing the job too. And that one's already in there, so you don't have to add anything.
Correct, as long as that's the option you choose. Yep.
Anybody want to do it around there? That's, okay.
I think Tim was talking about bringing us a resolution if we agree to that today.
We need to work on a policy first. I don't want to add
That was kind
a whole lot of work with accruals at June
This is the
30th.
budget, because obviously it won't go into effect till July, so you've got plenty of time.
So I want to talk about one other change that I did make. I realized later that in the first draft of this, I showed I had left the transfer from the general basic fund to the rural levy. I'd left it at the 25 level. So I did increase it to the maximum because I wanted to see how all this would work. That increases that to $1,040,000 from $1,008,000. Obviously that increased the 407. So you could, that's another lever you could pull. You could choose to reduce that back down to last year's or to 95%, whatever.
Sorry, which item was that?
The transfer to the secondary roads fund from the general fund.
That would bring it back down to 407?
No, not all the way. It would, just depends what you choose, but if you brought it to last year's level, that saves 32,000.
The worst case scenario, if we walked away and said we left the balance at $463,000, our option could be to use reserves.
It could.
I mean, depending on how things fall. use amendments, budget amendments as if things.
Well, budget amendments is really, as near as I can tell, just using reserves, so I think that's pretty much covered.
Well, sometimes other departments though have.
If they have other revenue, yeah,
Say.
right, if that's what you meant, if they have other revenue, they could amend, yes, that's true.
So that you look at all the options.
Yep.
But I just meant, worst case scenario, if that's
Yep.
what you meant. Were there, you mentioned that you'd asked staff at this department head meeting about suggested changes. I think.
I didn't,
Range.
I was trying to make sure they were all, you assume everybody listens to the board meeting, I don't know that, so yes, I did share that I'd presented a gap on Tuesday of 407, and, I pretty much said if anyone had ideas, it would be great to know them, but.
Were there some?
I have not really heard anything, no.
They're probably waiting for us. Maybe.
We're hoping not to have to make them, I don't know.
Step up.
Oh, got one.
Good morning.
How many?
Well, I thought it was 4,300 you wanted.
Oh, zeros?
No, I did go back, and actually I met with Michelle on Wednesday, and we talked a couple things, and I've kind of poured through the budget a little bit last week and did come up with some savings I can offer. A couple of line items that we haven't been using the full amount. My training and education budget, right now that's 109,623. We can drop that to 100,000 pretty easily. I haven't been hitting that mark. That's obviously one area, especially under the scrutiny that law enforcement's been under the last few years for more training, more stuff. I'm hesitant to cut that, but since we haven't been hitting that amount anyway, I feel safe dropping that. So there's about 10,000 there. We've got a minor equipment thing that we haven't used. It's been 5,000. We haven't used that the last couple of years, I think, especially with Al taking over. So there's 5,000 right there that we can zero out of my budget. Our wearing apparel for our employees, that was at 60,149. We haven't quite been hitting that either. Some of that's because we have been going to civilians, which cost less to outfit than a deputy. We're getting back into the deputies, but if we drop that to 50,000, there's another 10,000 there. For some reason, I have a line item for road and asphalt supplies in my budget of 4,500. I haven't been doing too many road repairs or asphalting, so we can zero that out. And then
4,500.
that was 4,500. And then I've got a safety equipment line item that's at 30,000 that we haven't been using too much of on that either. I'm honestly not even sure what does fall under there. But it looks like if we drop that to 15,000, we're still good. So right there's $44,500 for you. I currently budget 5 cars per year to rotate out. Due to accidents and stuff, really this year I can get by with 3 cars. So obviously going forward, I'll need to go back to the 5 to keep the rotations on, but just due to the number of accidents and things, obviously a negative thing, but in this case, usually we trade a car in when it gets that 140,000 mile one. I can get by doing 3 instead of 5 this year. So there's about $100,000 in savings there. I know that's capital, which Michelle says doesn't quite work quite as well, but
It doesn't have the same impact, but it
Right.
certainly helps, so.
Yep. And with that, we identified about $73,000 worth of things in my operating that could be capital, so that could possibly slide that over to and free up some there too.
Some of that would be that safety equipment, so
Okay,
it won't
so
be
some of
quite
that
that
may
much.
go
I gotta
over,
make sure we're not double counting.
But at any rate, if you
Yeah.
move
Thank
that
you.
over, I think there should be $100,000+ there. For you.
Hey, on training, do you have another pot that you can pull from should something come up that you guys need, that you fall short by cutting it 10 grand?
We should still be safe on that. Unfortunately, we're kind of at a point where we rely on a lot of our salary and wages, salary and benefits shortages to cover some of that stuff anyway. As it stands, we're usually pretty good there, and that's why I'm hesitant to cut too much more, because I don't want to become overly reliant on our operating to use our salary savings, but we'd still be safe there. We do our own monthly training. Obviously, we've got our own instructors for just about everything. Most of that comes from the schools we send people to. We end up sending a few more people to the academy, that kind of stuff. It will cut into that. Right now, we're right at 54%, which is about 50% of the budgeted year on that, and we're at 65% of the year end. So we're under that, and looking at the last 2 years, the highest we've been is 87,000 on that, so that's why I kept myself at 100, myself a little cushion there. I think we should be good, yeah.
Even with some new folks, right, some position filling, you're still comfortable on the training side? You know?
I would be comfortable going to a, like I said, the highest we've been the last few years is 87,000 on it, so I'm leaving myself a cushion there.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's where people cut sometimes, and it's like the training's much needed, I mean, in the areas.
Yeah, I mean, if there's something we need, I'm gonna send, I'll find the money somewhere to send somebody to it, obviously, but so the nice thing with having that facility out there, with having our own instructors, and then we actually do share back, of course, some with some of the other agencies on some of that stuff as well, so we get done what we need to get done, and I guess sometime if there's a great school out of state or something, we try and get those people that can get that experience, and we have to hold off a year on something like that, we could do that too.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Nate. Say, how much of that benefits us, Michelle? I mean,
Assuming we're at the 45,000 is what you had said first, right?
44.5 is what I came up with, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the odd one is that, yeah, that road asphalt supplies was 4,500.
So that puts you down to about
Kathy needs some help.
20.
Asphalt left over from the parking.
Just
that could have been,
oh, that's good.
Then it got repaired.
That could be,
you're gonna end up with potholes now. Sorry.
but not with the mix, Rich. Any other questions for me?
Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate, I appreciate it. Yeah, that puts the gap down to 418,825.
And I'll give a brief update. I have Todd Parsons, our fiscal coordinator, he's with me today. I'm not gonna be here next week, so I figured I'd get here in front of you and share any updates that we have. Michelle said she mentioned a department head meeting, because not all of us always watch all the meetings. I will admit, I needed that reminder. And right now, we're starting to write grants. That typically starts around February and goes through May or so. And we did receive good news that our local public health services grant that we typically either have gotten flat funding or a reduction on is actually increasing for FY26 with a gain of about $25,000. So we're gonna we'll need to adjust our revenue estimate to add that $25,000 to the pot. So I know it's not the full 430 or whatever that you're looking for, but
Every little bit
does chip
helps,
away
that's
at it.
great.
So,
Time.
yes, and we'll continue to write grants. I think we have 3 that we're working on so far, 3 or 4, and the other ones have been flat funding, but this one was an increase. So we'll just keep looking to see if those applications come through with any increases and communicate that over to Michelle. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Caitlin.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. You're not gonna be here, so if you have any questions on our budget too, or anything you wanna do.
I have a question on, I know things can change in 6 months, but where we're short on positions open now, how much dollars is that in particular that we've been,
I think what I had shown you was about 600,000 in January.
okay.
That's even netting out, over time for our 24/7 city across the street. That's how, yeah. It's interesting if you really get into the line items. You heard Sheriff Neff mention that sometimes they use their vacancy savings for other things. And so a change we've made at the board level the last few years is that $1 million turnover pool. When they use that for other things, that affects our, reduces the impact of the turnover pool. So there's a whole lot of things that go in to that million. We were very lucky last year because our interest revenue was higher than anticipated. So that absorbed a lot of those kinds of expense increases versus vacancy savings. And so it it gets complex, I guess, to determine what that pool is at the end of the year.
Would you say we're conservative on our estimations for the interest revenue this year? Are we moderate? Are we?
I'd give anything for a better crystal ball.
Oh, sure.
We know, I know a couple little pieces of information. We know our CD rates fell a good 20% in the first 6 months of this year. So by January 25, as we renew CDs, rates had fallen at least 20%. When we worked on the budget, which was in December, early January, we assumed that we would probably be looking at another 20% over the next 12 to 18 months. With everything that's happened in the last 3 weeks, I literally don't know what to guess now. I just don't know. We also know that we intend, and granted, the ARPA pool is, we do earn a little bit of interest on a lot of money. The tax money that comes in and goes out. We get a few days of it before it goes back out, for example. But in terms of the county's basic funding, we've had ARPA money that was actually, it was very unusual that we got the money before we spent it. Most money for us like that works on a reimbursement basis. So we have had the privilege of being able to invest that and earn some extra interest to that. We know, because we had to have everything under contract basically by December of 2024, and we have now awarded construction contracts, and as you walk around the courthouse, you can see we're using that money. So that ARPA balance is declining, and it should dramatically decline. By the end of June of 26, most of that's gonna be gone. So we also tried to factor less cash to have in the bank, plus rates falling. We're getting an exceptional, unheard of rate on our checking right now. We just don't know how long we'll be able to have that if rates keep falling, because they'll have to adjust that at some point, probably. Probably, I don't want to say definitely, but so we're trying to plan for that. There's only so much planning we can do. I do not have a good crystal ball. It's possible that will come in more, possible it'll be less. I just don't know.
But we are sitting at the 400,000 level, much better than we were last year.
Oh, absolutely. This is
Yeah.
this is doable. we can get there.
Yeah.
I think we can get there. We just have to.
We did.
Another-
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, last year, one of the things, I know that I've looked at some of the budgets too, we have our professional fees item in just about everybody's budget. I don't know how many, without us all looking at it more closely to see what that is. I would think almost across the board, we could make some kind of a reduction in that. And if we don't utilize that as an option, then we have reserves, obviously, too, or again, we look at other budget line items. But that would be a kind of a fair, not a cut to any departments at this point, not that we might not have to do that. We can still look at these after you do the scenarios.
Yeah,
That would be like I said, everybody knows you need professional fees. Everybody probably has more in their line items than we really need. And why not
I actually,
reduce that?
funny that you brought that up, because I was actually going through, started with maintenance because they have quite a bit in that line item. But what you find out, okay, the largest part of that is janitorial. No, we probably don't want to cut that, Then we have things in there like our annual fire alarm monitoring that we're required to do, annual fire extinguisher stuff that we're required to do, elevator inspections and maintenance that we're required to do. So they were not as much what I would call one-off projects that you could delay as I might have hoped when I started looking at it. But certainly if we ask all our departments to look at it countywide, there could be some projects in there that maybe they could delay or something like that.
Well, I don't even know if it's necessarily a delay. Just from conversations with department heads too, that might be a place where they keep that budget line sort of consistent. And sometimes they hit it, sometimes they don't. They don't want to get over their skis, and that's understandable in budgeting. Sort of along the same lines, have we looked back at the last 2, 3, 4 years when we close out our audits and see if there are any through lines of what's coming in, because we're rolling over 300, 400, 500,000 in the general fund. Are there any through lines year over year that we can look at and say, okay, well, we can reduce that moving forward to help lessen the rollover and then also lessen artificially cutting if we don't necessarily need to.
Right, I can look at that further. This last few years is a difficult time for comparisons because of COVID. Things are just, because I have spent time trying to do things like that. Is there some in there in certain places? Yes, absolutely. So those are things that could be considered, yeah.
Last year, we didn't fund the insurance deductible there, that was $125,000. That's kind of, doesn't affect the departments, it's kind of in that way, but it's something we can do.
It is. How it affects the departments ultimately, when there is an accident, and we'll just assume it's a vehicle accident for lack of better. We have been trying to fund those repairs that are under our insurance deductibles out of our self-insured internal service fund. So yes, I did eliminate the 125 last year, and then we immediately had a couple of police vehicles get totaled, or sheriff's vehicles, I should say, and a few other things that happened.
Yeah.
So I did put that back in. That does not affect the general fund. I'm funding that out of general supplemental. I believe that's an allowable expense. But in a way to reduce taxes, you could either eliminate or reduce that.
Those are the kinds of things I'd like to see us reduce before we look at anybody's budgets and say, okay, departments, we need it, like we talked about last year, we talked about this year even. Before you have to go into your budgets, and you've presented and done a lot of work for, you have as well. I would like to see what we can do in different scenarios and what we can come up with before we say, hey, everybody, go back to the drawing board. Because, honestly, I expect the staff, and have seen for years, they come to us with very lean budgets. Now, yeah, we're all human, and are there some cushion, like you said, maybe is there too much in professional fees? I don't know, without looking at it. But those kind of things that we can make adjustments or deductibles that we can, and then we have reserves for these exact reasons as well, not just the disasters of flooding and all those issues that could help hurt us, or what state mandates to us come up to, things like that, but to help get through these types of things, if it really is that kind of an issue. But if we can come up with a bit more, better for it.
I just wanted to mention one thing that might be helpful, and I haven't talked to Michelle about this, but it's just more of an FYI, like when we pull in the salary data, a lot of that is done just to prep for budget at like December, that we're kind of guessing. Michelle's made some changes, I think, with staffing changes, especially in the sheriff's office, like those command officers that retired and then those that promoted in, which elected official or appointed deputies, that doesn't really change, but what changes, and I don't know if this has been incorporated yet, but it wouldn't just be Nate's office, but Nate's is a good example. We took, instead of fulfilling a sergeant position, sworn sergeant, we did the civilian sergeant, which is about a $15 an hour swing per person if you're replacing a top sergeant who just promoted to lieutenant with a brand new civilian sergeant. That's a pretty substantial gap. I don't know if that's been reflected in the budget for Nate, but even across all the departments, we could start to look at where those changes have occurred. Another one was auditor's office, right? So I think you replaced both of those at less than what?
Make sure those things have been
Kind of fine-tuned.
recognized in there.
Yeah, it's just an idea, but
Well, that's what
we could kind of work with on those salary projections. Now that we have known, who's in those roles and what they're making today, have a look at better projections than what we did in December.
I can tell you that I did try to update the sheriffs based on all the turnover that happened December 31st. And elections, we did also adjust hers. There could be others, you just have to cut it off at some point, so things that have maybe happened since January 1st, depending on the department, they're likely not reflected. If they happened by the end of December, they did. There was one in conservation, I'm not sure when that person left, but we did adjust that to the new one, and that saved, I know that particular one was about a $10,000 savings, so. I did try to catch those along the way
Well, like you said,
as much as we could.
but maybe like coming back and taking. I'm sorry Linda left, because I hate to sound like we're talking without her here present. She's got 2 vacancies right now, she said, and she didn't feel that. I think that was kind of what she felt she could do last year, to not replace those kind of as an effort to make the funding that we did last year. And now, of course, she's in the downstairs,
Yeah.
really doesn't have room for the staff.
That's one of the reasons we held off.
But I just thought,
Yeah.
and this is why I said, it was just one of those, if she said, I think, her, not exact words, but words were somewhat that until they got into the new location and saw if this made them more efficient, she didn't even know if she'd replace those people or not,
Right.
but she would. I didn't mean that she wouldn't maybe need someone later, but I thought, I don't know if you have those counted in vacancies, but it's almost like 2 positions there, should be $1,000.
Correct.
That we just look at without touching anybody.
Those are currently counted, so in 25, those vacancies go into that turnover pool. They help support that $1 million of savings we're hoping to have in vacant positions. But yes, I think Linda and I have chatted about that too. I think an adjustment probably could be made.
Could help.
At least maybe for one or part or
Yeah,
something.
I said always, when we did it in the health department, they were wanting us to be very cautious that while they reduced positions, they were restructuring and wanting us to know that they may come back and ask for a position or something later. It was kind of like we had to remind ourselves, that was true. It's not like, gee, you reduced it. Why? But if that's something.
And as I mentioned to departments Wednesday, other than if they really have deficiencies and really decide they don't need a position, those are the last thing on my list to
Well, it is.
consider.
We did it last year, is what I meant. It was because we had it last year. It was like, I remember thinking that too when we did it to her last year. I hoped she wasn't just going without a position because she made the commitment. We tried to stress to everybody, if it was going to affect the services, you need to come to us and tell us. And I know some probably can, some just try to move along, but in the transition in the office kind of, we don't have room for people. But yeah, if that could be something, Michelle, just something to consider. Rory, good. I was gonna say, Rory was gonna talk a little bit about his budget, but because he had some of the projects, the security one.
I kind of wanted to touch too on the professional services. We, as you can tell, we do run a fairly tight budget, and when you look at historicals, that's really what we kind of base ours on. But look, this year particularly, with all the upgrades that we're doing in our facilities, you look at the jail, we're upgrading the control system over there. We're upgrading many variable frequency drives, items that kind of pop up as unexpected repairs. So we're optimistic that with these upgrades, we might see these numbers come down and might be able to adjust these budget numbers moving forward. Over at Pinecrest as well, we have a very large HVAC upgrade project over there. Now, keep in mind, we are taking on another facility, which that does potentially add other costs, but it's completely remodeled, so it's all going to have new equipment. We're hopeful that we'll get the solar array approved under our capitals, so that will have a good impact on our utility number. But looking at that professional services, one thing I did discover is we do have right around $50,000 in there for a service contract for the control systems. So for a short-term cut, we could potentially look at cutting that back a bit, because we don't know what those service contracts are going to be with the new system moving forward. It'll come with at least a 1-year warranty, but then after that point, we'll start negotiating those service contracts. So for FY26, we could potentially lower that by that amount, which is a little something.
Oh, sure, appreciate it.
The only other item that we increased this year was our repairs, and like I mentioned, with the upgrades that we're doing, we could potentially go back down and eliminate that $15,000 ask. So there's roughly $65,000 there that I feel pretty comfortable shaving off of our budget. Do you want to talk about any of the other?
Yeah, the security and the
Yep.
potential looking for a building.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah, so with regards to security, a couple of things. One is what was presented on my presentation a few weeks back, but looking at switching up how we do our security here at the courthouse. And I've talked with Nate Neff and kind of went back, try to look at how we came about with our armed security officers back in 2020, I believe it was. I couldn't find a lot of information. I think a lot of it was under possibly closed session discussions. But per a new law that came out at that time, if we're going to prohibit weapons into the courthouse, we have to provide an armed guard. So at that time, I believe an armed guard paid for out of 60/40, and then a second one as a backup and a relief person was paid for from Brian's, the attorney's budget, if I'm not mistaken. And so what the presentation for 26 is to add a third deputy, which would put us in a good position to adequately secure the courthouse. The key, though, is all three of those guards would have to be dedicated to the courthouse security. And if they're not, then there is a possibility that we would have to maybe look at adding another additional position that kind of outweighs the cost savings benefit, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, because I was gonna say some of the things we talked about here, I think, was using perhaps retired officers or some mix of what, and I think it was understanding, we have 2 deputies in the building now currently.
Correct.
They don't typically work the security station at all because, okay, maybe you wanted to address some of that, but I just thought that was, I thought it seems that we're lacking, people recognizing the security and a security officer there. And not just someone, as we've said, kind of like bag checkers at airports and that is a little more serious. We want somebody to know it is a secured entrance to the building and that type of thing.
Yeah, right now, the 2 armed guards that are here doing the courthouse, they do roam from time to time. Right now, I believe we have 1 guard down at the temporary treasurer's department area, just to have a presence there. Again, for this to really work, I do believe that we would need the commitment of at least 3 guards just to cover the long shifts, the various scheduling, because they would be staggered essentially. Those guards would have to be staggered in order to meet the hours of operation.
Could we do some kind of a mix of like the people that are like having the presence there, yet use somebody else to do parts of the job?
Like I mentioned too, it definitely doesn't have to be a full-fledged deputy. We've looked at cost scenario for a DO as well, or it could just be somebody that the county, whether it's under the sheriff's department or our department, hires. Like you said, like a retiree. That would be an ideal situation, I believe, if there's somebody out there that would be interested. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Nate, or?
Yeah.
No, I mean, this is something obviously I know Supervisor Brandt and Roy are both brought to me if we'd be willing to do. I'm more than happy to try and help out with it.
right now, as we've talked about, I had like the 9 retirements at the end of the year. So right now, my staffing, I couldn't swing it even if I wanted to tomorrow. So we've got a couple people hired, a couple more starting, but even once I get somebody hired, it's 2 to 3 months worth of training for that body counts. So it would realistically be at least summer, if not fall, before I could do much to help out. We talked about, so the 2 that we have assigned to the courthouse now, yeah, Linda has asked if one be in the basement for the most part while the treasurer's office is down there, because they're pretty vulnerable where they're at. So for the most part, one of my guys stand down there, the other's kind of trying to roam the building, being a presence for the rest of the staff here. We try not to have either of those persons get involved in court or anything like that, but if I don't have anybody else available and one of the judges calls and says, I want somebody in 301 right now, that person goes into 301 right now. To add a 3rd deputy or armed civilian detention officer, we could cover most of that. I still, because it's longer than an 8-hour day, and then with the relief factor, I really think it would take 2 people. So again, that's gonna be kind of up to you guys to decide. If it's 1 body, we can do it either cost neutral, if not a little bit of a savings for what your contract is downstairs. To go 2, it's probably gonna cost you more. And obviously right now, I don't have the 2 bodies, I only have the 1 body to give you. Looking into retirees, something like that, I would be happy to do that. We don't have a reserve program, that's a whole nother thing. We don't have part-time, that'd probably get into some of the union stuff too. If they're actually being hired by me, if they're being hired by the county to work down there, then that's a whole separate issue. Vipers shouldn't be an issue, any of that kind of stuff, depending on where you're at. So I think there's a lot to weigh in on that. Again, I'm willing to help, but.
I know you were, so I appreciate, like I say, both of you kind of thinking about it. I just thought from a budget standpoint, we don't seem like we're there yet, whether it's building the budget and taxing people for it, without a solution. That's kind of.
Correct, yeah, and my initial thought was, yeah, we can do it with 1, but the more I think on it, the more I don't think I can do it with 1, and I don't want to commit to that 1 and then come back and say, I need you to pay for a 2nd body for me that I can't get hired right now anyway.
And we have to revisit that anyway. Even the funding that Brian's using, and I'm working on that, I don't have all the information yet today, but there's maybe some holes in there, so.
For the position he's funding currently, you mean, in that,
Yeah.
Continue doing it into next year? Okay.
And that's, that's outside of the 60/40. We know we have issues with 60.
We have enough in 60/40 though to plan for that for next year?
No.
We don't?
No, when I showed that 60% fund is in the hole for 2026, just to this, without adding. And then that assumed funding 1 full deputy out of the attorney's fine collections, which, like I said, I'm still doing some research on that to provide updated information. I just don't have all the pieces quite yet. And Rory, I'm going to ask, can you repeat what year this all started?
I believe it was 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
2020?
Yeah.
Because I'm having trouble.
At the same time, we decided to place a guard over at the Pinecrest facility as well.
Is that kind of what we had an incident here in the court?
Pardon me?
Is this back when we had that incident and then we were asked then, I think, when Brian started funding it?
I believe so.
I think
yes.
There was that, but then the armed part came about because of a law change, or either a law change or a law that we became aware of. I guess I'm not sure.
It was a
exactly.
change.
It was
Wasn't
a
sure
change,
what it was.
yeah.
I just didn't know the
So,
date.
but yeah, the incident,
Yeah.
the
Prompted us.
courtroom is what prompted us to have the 2 additional deputies just roaming the courthouse, so.
Can we get, not to be today, but can we get a breakdown of the type of incidents that we look at in the basement? Over the last 2, well.
Are you talking about the treasurers?
Yeah, if we've
Because
got someone
she's-
stationed, if we've got some, just thinking through all of next year, if we've got someone stationed there now.
No, that's just, oh, I see. Okay, because the reason that they're there now is just because she's had to relocate
For sure.
temporarily.
For sure.
Yeah.
And there was an incident this last week with a person that got unruly that, we've had to give extra attention for.
But that project will be
Should be.
done,
Yes,
right, so
right. I see where you're going now.
just
Yeah.
trying to figure out,
Yeah.
making sure we're right sizing for the right time. I get that right now we've gotta have somebody down there, but we aren't gonna have them there.
Yeah, once she's back up here,
Yeah.
that part won't be.
Okay.
At the time when we got the 2, because that was kind of the the feel of the courthouse at the time, I think, was just that
Well, we had to do one, and then I believe Tony Thompson wasn't comfortable just placing the one. He wanted to have a backup, so we always would have an armed guard present to meet that code requirement, or that law requirement.
But is that second one, is that full-time here?
well, so I've got one that comes in at 7:30,
Yeah.
and then the other comes in at 9, so we've got coverage in the building from 7:30 until 5 PM that way.
Yeah.
And then they're kind of responsible for breaking each other in lunch breaks, everything else breaks throughout the day. So even though there are 2 assigned here during the day, their shifts aren't the same, and with breaks and everything in between, you're probably, I mean, you're not getting anywhere near 16 hours of coverage here.
And I do want to mention, that's essentially the same as what we're doing with our outsourced company as well. They have the 3 guards down there. They take their breaks, another one comes in to cover. They stagger their times just to make sure that they're here from 7 a.m. to 5:15, I believe is our hours right now. So yeah, for this to work, we would have to have relief. We would have to have commitment. I would say for at least 2 guards, it would be nice to have the third one. If that third one had to be pulled out for something, we could make do. We do it now with our outsourced provider. There's days we only have 2 guards down there because if somebody calls in sick. It happens more often than not. The reliability has just really gotten very poor over the last couple of years. We have had some incidents. We had a gentleman actually walk into, this happened last week. We had a gentleman walk right past the guard and go into a secured area where the judges are at.
Might I just add, that should never have happened ever in the first place.
Yeah.
But that should be a hard line of defense that nobody gets through. That's the problem I have with this. Like, I'm willing to lose my seat over this issue. Like, it'll cost money. You're gonna get quality. Sometimes for better service and quality, you need to pay a little bit more. And so anybody out there listening, I would ask you to come to me if you have issues with it, because this is something I have no problem paying a little bit more for. I mean, the people that work in this building and the customers alike not only deserve the feeling that they're secure, but they deserve the reality that this place is secure. It's going to take one incident, and we're going to do it anyway. So I'd say just get ahead of the ball here.
Not necessarily a selling point, but the amount of time that our department invests into this outsourced security, it's quite a bit. Just managing personnel, it's been a challenge. And we haven't even been monitoring the parking lots because our main goal is to keep the building safe. So we're trying to do the best we can with what we have. But I do feel that if we put our own people in there, we're going to get a much better product at the end of the day.
Justin, what are your thoughts on retired officers?
Whatever the selection process would be, I mean, you got to imagine go through some kind of firearms course, which they have to do annually anyway to maintain their carrying permit. I mean, that'd be up for discussion, I guess, with Sheriff Neff as far as how he wants to, or when Rory, what makes the most sense. But in terms of cost savings, I think there might be advantage. I know it happens around the state.
I mean, Hy-Vee's got
True.
a number of retired police officers.
They pay a premium wage.
Yeah, well, they're at top of the line, yeah.
$45 an hour they're getting paid there, so.
I mean, how would the?
I'll retire.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
I mean, how would the use of reserve officers work? Do you see that being a real possibility? And then how would that savings?
Get a legitimate reserve officer, there is actually a ton of training to go through the state to get that process certified. So a retiree, we could bring in as a reserve without probably too much effort, if any of them are even interested. A lot of guys, by the time they take the uniform off, they're ready to be done wearing uniform. There is a special provision for a special deputy that I'm honestly not sure, I'm not familiar with that. I'd have to look into see what that would require. And again, I don't know if that falls back under the same pay scale, if that falls under our purview. I'm really not sure what that would take. But reserves are something we don't have, and there's like 8 or 10 modules they have to go through, and they become just shy of a certified officer when you do a reserve. So.
Not a real lot of
The other issue is the reality of having to go hands-on with somebody too. Every once in a while that will happen, and in reality, I think, referencing the Hy-V, retired officers that work for Hy-V, I imagine they don't go into it with the expectancy that they're going to have to fight people. But that is a very real possibility here. And so, I guess what I had in my mind was, as an option, overtime slots off for our guys off shift, deputies off shift, if they wanted to sign up. Not that that would be my go-to option, but I wonder if there'd be interest in doing that. People just pop over for 4 or 5 hours.
There probably would be interest in that on a overtime gig if you really want to fund that, I guess, but.
Just to be clear on kind of staffing levels, are we saying it would take 3 for the whole building? 2
That's what we,
front and 1 roaming?
no, we try to maintain 3, and what it is we have one person that comes in the morning, opens up, and then the next person will come in soon after, and then they're staggered, just so we at least have bodies here throughout the day. That third person really is, originally was meant to cover the high activity periods, tax time, Tuesdays, jury, where we do have a lot of people coming in. We threw that third person in really to cover those high periods of traffic.
As far as
How many total for the building?
I guess it depends on what your ultimate goal is. If you still want 2 people free to roam this building, I probably need 2, so there's at least 1 of them, and they would kind of all rotate through each other and break each other. If you're saying we don't need the people roaming the building anymore, the deputies roaming the building, then 2 to 3 would cover the front and be able to break each other and that stuff. But that's what I'm saying. If you still want the presence of having 2 officers roaming the building, I probably need 2 additional to get that front desk covered.
4.
So it would be a total of 4 to keep the 2 people in the building as is and cover that.
So the existing setup that we have with our outsourced is we only ask them to check at the end of the day, walk the building at the end of the day and look for any kind of suspicious packaging or anything like that. Other than that, they're to be at their station. So ideally, you would have 2 people running the line, 1 person focused on the x-ray machine.
Is there a reason that they're sometimes down on the first floor? Like, especially when we have those heavy traffic days, like Tuesday mornings and Wednesday, where that presence, when you first open up and have a lot of traffic and like people to feel secure, like you said, they typically aren't there at the station. Is there a reason they're not at the station? Because that seems to be.
Because when they were down there, I got complaints that my guys are doing nothing but hanging out in that lobby and not roaming this building like they're supposed to be. So we tell them to roam the building, and then we get told that they're not down there being a visible presence where they should be.
Well, they're not. I think anybody can tell you, though, they're not a visible presence when you enter the building.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the idea behind that, and I could be wrong, but I believe that's the idea behind that law change is to, if you're going to ask somebody to not bring their weapon in, then you have to provide protection for that person. So I think that's the intent of the law.
And I think at that point, we're actually bound to escort that person if he comes in and says, I don't feel safe, I need an escort to the 2nd floor, and so then we have to assign that up. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened, and someone's requested it that I'm aware of, but.
Well, they have sometimes been. I don't mean that nobody's ever been at that security station, but I think that's the presence that kind of, you want people to feel secure.
I think that's what we're striving for. Yeah, that's what I'd like to see, actually. I'd like to see that improvement in our security here. I get a lot of feedback just from public, from staff, and it's not usually positive.
If we had 4, could we have 1 or rotate that they would be making trips out to Pine Crest as well, just being a presence out there for a couple hours every day, random hours, just. That you're gonna possibly.
You're not gonna have coverage here if you want with that, try and get me
I
out
gotta
of
do
the
that
line
too,
crest
then.
as well. That's-
They typically don't have.
Yeah, there was a discussion at one point where that question was asked, I think. We did end up putting a full-time security guard over there, but I think over the last couple of years, we've kind of questioned whether or not we're getting our bang for our buck on that as well. What is this person really getting for us? And I think at one point it was mentioned, could we have a deputy just periodically show up, but nothing set in stone? I think there's some discussion about it. Obviously, with staffing, that'd be up to you. But I know there was talk about it.
I think Tony mentioned it a couple times,
Yeah.
having people do
Well,
that, but I don't know.
Talked about whether it would be needed. I know general feel is we're not looking on to take on security at Pinecrest.
No, I
get
get
you
that.
guys, I had a
Big
meeting there
stop.
yesterday and I walked right in by and he didn't so much as bat an eye at me or anything. I went to the elevator and.
Yeah. That's about 47,000, I believe, Michelle,
Sounds
40,
about right.
47, 48,000 a
In
year that we're paying for that service.
The other thing, I think the roving guard is a popular option now because there's no hard line at the front. And I don't know if the roving is even necessary once you get, everything eliminated from that front line beyond, so.
I really don't think it is. I think if you show that presence as people are coming in, then that's the main thing, is securing the building, preventing weapons from coming in.
Mhm.
Really taking ownership in your position and what you're doing. I just really feel having our own people there, we're gonna see a huge improvement with that process.
I agree.
Even if we've done the staffing ourselves, initially, I know the security people, when we did start, would have been, yeah, but definitely secure.
Could we look at a couple, I mean, it sounds like the scenario, this is a three-person level then, we're talking about? Three of our own people at the front door?
I think that's what you're asking. I mean, if you want us to do it, I think it's probably gonna take at least 3 if we're not counting on roaming the building. I think it's very effective, that thing in there. And then it's probably find the people to do it, I don't know as.
Want to do it?
Yeah, I don't know as that's gonna be the most desirable
That's the only
position
thing
down there, but.
I heard, I wasn't sure that deputies would really want, kind of like the jail, when some of the positions are harder to fill.
Yeah,
and they would-
yeah, running the metal detector and stuff's probably, we can find a off-duty TSA agent to come do it.
Yeah.
Can't imagine what that would cost.
That would be cheaper.
Yeah, I don't have it with me, but the cost that we're paying right now for the outsourced and the all-in cost for a deputy at top end, I believe, is almost neutral.
Really?
With adding, you said what?
Just by adding the
Just by adding
Yeah.
one?
Trading out Securitas for
Yeah.
one of my guys, yeah.
I think 147, I believe, is our contract.
Somewhere in there,
That we're
yeah.
currently paying.
Yeah, we-
But is that including the 47 from Pinecrest into that level out number? Okay.
That's another cost.
You're probably getting a cheaper rate on that because you've got the contract here, so I would anticipate that one would probably go up on you though if you.
Not nearly.
And we would be required, are we required?
We're not required to have a guard there. I believe we put the guard there primarily because of COVID, kind of in that time.
There was an incident there too, I mean, some of the museum flag is a javelin.
That's,
Yeah, there was that.
Somebody-
So as we like have
Everybody's
this,
got the phone out there.
There's somebody,
Yeah.
the one I remember.
I'd like to see us try to improve the security in that building too at the same time. So I'd be interested as we look at these scenarios, what it would cost to have a deputy there instead of, because we're not getting, much value, I think, out of what.
You'd be looking at about, for a deputy, about $100,000 increase over at Pinecrest.
And I'm gonna struggle to staff this
Yeah.
because I really have no interest or effort, or not that I don't have an interest in protecting Pinecrest out there, but I don't think it's very feasible for me to.
Nate, is it possible to use one of the civilians, jailers, rotating voices out there at Pinecrest?
Yeah, I've got a handful of the civilian detention officers that we have trained in firearms. They go through the same training and stuff that we do, so they are qualified to carry. We could put them in here. Again, courthouse security, I feel very much responsible for. Pinecrest, it's removed enough that I really just don't.
We could look at, I know years ago, they had a parking lot attendant that reported to our department. That position had been eliminated. You know, we could take a look at, for Pinecrest anyway, what that would look like as far as a job description, maybe under our department for us to manage that position. We could look at something like that possibly. Then I would just, you know, obviously we'd have to do training, and, you know, I'd have to maybe work with the sheriff's department on that as well, I don't know. There's that as a possibility.
Sort of, were you asking kind of for some scenarios to see some
Yeah, I'd like
scenarios?
to see some scenarios. I do want to get away from this company. It's not providing what we need.
So Michelle, you've already got some, obviously, with the, knowing what the contract is now, but to add some,
There's just a, yeah,
what?
there's more discussion that needs to come on the existing arrangement. We can add other options to it. Yes, I would like to see a schedule, a sample schedule. We really need to figure out how many people we really need to make it work.
Well, yeah, so maybe another question about security here. At the door, if we're gonna have 2 at all times, those both have to be sworn officers. Now, if we've got one there at all time and they're switching out, then if we've got.
No, I could definitely rotate one of my civilians in, 1 or 2 in even.
Yeah.
I mean, the big thing is, so they're fully trained on us, they don't have the power of arrest is the only thing, they can still detain someone until we get a sworn officer there. So that part I have no issue with.
And if we were running 1 sworn officer at all times at the front door and a civilian, right? Because we have 2 people at the door at all times.
Yeah, I think in the presentation I provided what those dollar amounts are, whether it's a sworn officer or a civilian.
Yeah, additional deputy was 120 to 145. Alternative civilian jail officer was 76 to 150.
That was a very rough range. But
Like you said, it's got to be covered.
yeah.
Need to know what how it
Yeah, I can work on potentially some different scenarios for Pinecrest facility to look at that position.
Is construction over there going to cause any issues or concern? I mean, or changes that maybe you don't have as much need for the?
You know, we have a staff over there that's pretty attentive, so I feel pretty comfortable that our staff could manage the in and outs of the construction.
You know, several of the HHS people are remote, working remote, so they're not in the building and having some of the visitors and stuff we did here too. But even, and VA's got the separate door.
Right.
So they're not.
Right.
And kind of like when we talked about areas, they're not accessing the top building. It's just kind of like people aren't allowed to come in and just go to floors.
There's we have fob access on the wing doors, 1st through 4th. The 5th floor, you have the reception there. There is not fob access to the wings there, but you do have a receptionist in that area. And that's obviously all getting changed once we put the new clinic in, and that'll be fob access to secured as well. So. But I think, you know, and then also in my budget, I put some additional exterior cameras for that facility. And then along with the project, the ARPA project, we also have additional cameras in that as well. So we are looking at increasing the visibility for that facility and also door security. So we've made pretty good strides over the years, I think. But yeah, the guard that's currently, the service that we're getting right now and for what we're paying, I think we can get, I think we can come up with some better ideas. Mark on that.
Thank you, guys.
Are you gonna talk anything about the attorney's office space? Rory? We didn't have to talk specifics about what building, but maybe we need to. Is he ducking or hiding?
Rory.
Not listening, if he was like.
I'm sorry.
Are you gonna talk anything to the attorney's office space?
Yeah.
I need to step away for a couple
Yeah, that's a
minutes.
good idea.
Yeah.
Take a 5-minute, uh-huh.
Yeah.
I think you really wanted me to elaborate, but.
No.
Bring this over to the board of supervisors office.
Yeah, I know, it was a suspicious package.
Exactly.
Couldn't hear me.
Big
Sorry.
No, it's
Supposed to say.
Short sleeve, breathable shirt, but is it planned right?
Yeah.
sorry if I had to figure that out, like, I just had a hard time hearing.
Another suspicious attack.
So I said, oh, they were in here testing it when I came in.
I'll bring that
Email.
Yeah.
You got a bullhorn, don't you?
Yeah, the bullhorn too. I bought 5 microphones. I got enough mics for
If you're able to take a look at that before the
Yeah,
update,
but it is challenging.
or we could just. Now
it's frustrating.
Actually,
Brandon.
although it's going quickly, all of a sudden, I'm okay to see. While it's going real slowly, but Brandon's gonna.
I'm gonna update in my, I had one that
Just a
took
little, I don't know if you were all, I mean, Kathy, I'll check it and forward it to you though specifically.
Michelle, I'm gonna, just if you wanna get us prepped at some point, the supervisor office question on that budget.
Okay. That's fine. Whenever you wanna talk about it.
What else are we doing? Ice,
Yeah,
health,
we have.
facilities, research. Didn't get to that. The problem is not specifically geared to public health as to.
Still gonna be flying.
This is just, this part, I think we've got a.
Davis, do you wanna do that offline?
It's only a couple
I'm
items.
just sending.
Okay.
Yeah, but it might be 20 grand.
I know she was.
It's good.
Yeah.
There you go.
In ours? Until we wanna do something.
Exactly.
All right.
See that? Handsome man, straw hat, teaching about mulching. It's me. It's me.
Here's the way over here.
Curve in the hat, one question.
What's that?
You what?
Curve in the hat, one
We're gonna get there.
Yeah.
What's in that? Was in the original format?
Oh, he's.
Was that you in there?
Soil and water?
Yeah, soil and water.
I don't know.
If he was, he doesn't know it.
Oh, the guy, Vern?
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's too loud. Okay. We'll get back into session. Rory, you were gonna talk a little bit about some,
Yeah, so with the attorneys, probably back around April of last year, we were asked to look at different options for the county attorney's space. I think Brian had mentioned due to attracting people, retaining people, he really felt that the atmosphere in the basement was a big contributor to not being able to attract and retain people. So At that time, we threw out some suggestions. We actually developed a small committee. We looked at several properties. We looked at the basement. We looked at different scenarios that we could potentially provide to the board to alleviate that. And so I want to say a total of about 6 or 7 properties we looked at in the downtown area. Some of them needed a lot of work. Some of them just didn't meet our needs with square footage. Parking was another conversation topic that we've had. The county attorneys, they fully staffed, they would, we calculated they would need approximately 3,300 square feet. And that would be 18, I believe, attorneys, so that would be fully staffed. We did look at a couple of the buildings from the city, and I think I presented it, well, I did present it in my budget a couple of weeks ago. There are opportunities out there, I believe, but I believe we're not quite to the point of determining whether or not what that cost is going to be for those sites. I think the annex library across the street, that was one of the facilities we looked at. I put in my rough estimate of what that building needed, and keep in mind, that was just an hour-long tour of that facility. If that was something that I think we wanted to get serious about, we definitely need more time, maybe a third-party company to look, just like we did over at the Raymount building.
Am I right that anytime we were to take on purchase of a property, don't we usually get that third party inspected?
In my experience, yes. My only experience was Raymount. We did hire a third party to do an inspection over there, so. I mean, we have a great staff. They're very skilled. We could do this, we could look at it, but sometimes just getting another pair of eyes to look at a facility, it's just a reassurance, so.
Well, and some of them haven't lined up with the timing for, I think, where Brian was looking for something like more immediate.
Yeah.
He said that doesn't mean there couldn't be something there from a lease perspective or something that comes on the market, but that some of the others had more timelines to work with as well. So, point.
Another building we looked at right across the street was the Walsh building. There was some interest in that, square footage wise. It felt like that might be a possibility as well. Windows was a big factor, I believe, for Brian, and that was somewhat of an issue for that building. But we also looked at possibility of adding on to this building as a scenario.
That's right, we talked about in the front, right? Somebody did the discussion.
Just right on the Fifth Street side. Yeah. So as far as for budget, I've only got the numbers that I presented last week in my budget as concrete numbers. If we wanted to move forward. But again, like you mentioned, Linda, the timing, that particular facility wouldn't be ready until February or March of next year.
Are you saying you had the operating in your budget?
I had the $30,000 ongoing cost is what I put under the capital.
Is in your budget? Oh, under capital.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would have to be added on to the operating. And $110,000, I believe, for the initial investment, and that was again just cosmetics, going in, doing new carpet, painting, things like that.
I know one of the standing committees I was looking at was the Building and Space Utilization Committee. Has that met at all recently?
No, the reason we hadn't met prior to April when we started looking for the attorneys. It was decided at that point that we wanted a smaller group because the Space Committee is quite large. Okay. Being that we were looking at something specific, that smaller group was at that time, I believe Dan Tavis and myself. We have not met as a full space committee group. I can't tell you the exact date, but it's probably been about 2 years maybe.
I'd like to be part of that if we get a chance.
We keep in mind, we had our, with the ARPA funds, we did hire Envision to do a space assessment. So kind of throughout that process, we involved the space committee throughout that. And then we rolled into where we're at now. With the smaller.
Got everything down, that's what we got to say, and then we got ARPA dollars and start looking at other things. The committee hasn't been together.
So I don't know if all of you have copies. I didn't bring my zip drive, so I don't have access to that to kind of walk through some of the options that were presented to me, some of the overview, cost outs, considerations.
Well, I guess
if you want to look at that, if you have any questions.
It might be great, I mean, we might find the property we love, but right now we don't have the things in place to tax for it. So it wouldn't be a project I'd see that would tax, that's my question.
It'd be a capital.
It'd have to be
reserve.
Yeah, that's what I said, it could be reserved if something, timelines change, or if something else comes on board and we look at it and think this is a project that fits and works, whether it's lease or whether it is purchase. You could then make the decision on the timeline we're talking about.
If we. That's later. I'll ask later. I'll ask, it's a super specific Michelle question, so I'll do it later.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to let Brian down and that we're looking for something.
Yeah.
So if there's something that we can be doing now in the meantime, I'm more than willing to put the time in to help.
Is there any, I was gonna say.
I mean, what's the next steps on?
What I had mentioned to Brian after we presented, or after I presented this at budget, is that we would get another meeting set up and do another walkthrough of the facility across the street. So that could be a next step if anybody would like to attend that, to take a look. I think at some point, if we're gonna get serious about it, then we need to start looking at what a third party would look like, to do a little deeper dive.
Yeah. Sure, to make the decision on how interested we continue to be. Yeah.
On the purchase price that I identified, it didn't come along with any terms as far as this is good for so many days, but I could look into that to see. There's 3 options. There's 2 lease options and a purchase option.
Was the purchase, was it $375 or
$475, I believe. And that square footage, I didn't write it down. Sorry about that. I want to say it's right around 4,000 square feet, if I remember correctly.
And then you said March of next year is the good of the students. They
The
can start.
response that I got back from the city would be February, March of next year, is when they hope to be moving out. So I think they've got some things they need to shore up on their end too.
I guess I'm okay with it not being, an immediate move in, because we're still making progress towards, it's potentially the best. It's the best option that I've heard of to us, so.
So, budget, I guess.
So,
Right now, that's kind of a thing, but.
We got professional services already.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did it run for the third-party review of just ballpark?
Probably about $1,500, I'm guessing.
Okay.
Not too terribly bad.
All right.
Yeah.
And really what I'd be looking for is a deeper dive for things like asbestos, something that might end up costing us money down the road. What I can tell you is the mechanicals over there all look like they've been maintained very well. Some of them are newer than others, but for the most part, the lower level would seem dry. Didn't have that musty smell like you'd see in an older building, so it appeared to be well kept. There is some external issues, windows, caulking, things like that would need to be done. But structural wise, nothing glaring jumped out at me when we walked through. The other thing I'd like to mention too, that I don't think I brought up, but there is a pretty good amount of storage space over there as well. And so if we were to acquire that, we could alleviate some of our space here at the courthouse too, open up for further opportunities down the road in the basement if we were to look at something there. As well as Sandy, at some point she's going to need a home for her materials that she has in her storage room, particularly if the new IT space is approved. So that could be a good opportunity for that as well. So just something to keep in mind. And it appeared dry, so I didn't see any glaring issues there.
So I think we maybe try to schedule another walkthrough. Sounds like Richie and I are interested in joining that, and then we could come back and have an agenda item for inspection. Yeah, that works.
Okay. 15 minutes between the board meeting and the strategic planning.
Well, you don't, just, yeah, yeah, that's right. Forget that,
Run over
on a
there,
Tuesday,
yeah.
no.
We're
we
still
can
tied
do
up
it.
for a while.
We can still talk about it too if we need to, but yeah. You can
Yeah, I can make that happen as soon as possible.
Because, see, there's usually a couple of night Tuesdays.
Would you be in?
At home.
Did you get a chance to talk with Rory, or I'm sorry, with TJ?
I did not.
Okay.
But I will.
Just curious what insights he might be able to offer you.
He's the maintenance guy.
Assessor.
Oh, he needs our TJ, yeah. Sure.
So,
And Michelle, when do we need to have our first number in the state?
Must be uploaded by 4 p.m. on March 5th.
Okay. Maybe sometime shortly after that, just thinking through work session or budget work sessions up until that point, and maybe after that initial, be able to squeeze in the walkthrough of board members after a meeting. Just recognizing these are running a little long, and then we've got strategic planning most Tuesday afternoons as it is. If we schedule a walkthrough after that March 5th date, on a Tuesday after.
Is that the board? I was gonna say, because there is one we have Homer Day coming up.
Yeah.
We can take advantage of that
Yeah.
and do something else, but yeah, we'll take a look at it. But everybody, that might be a way we could do it, sure. Take a look. Yeah.
okay,
Okay.
well, I'll make it happen.
That was good. Appreciate it, Roy.
Okay.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions I have for you, Michelle, on the board supervisor's office.
Oh,
Just as a way to maybe keep chipping away at our number.
yeah.
Right now, we've got 40,000, item 0670, professional services, we have 40,000 allocated, 40,500. Is that just payment to Garnett? Is that?
That's what it was budgeted for, was continued strategic planning, as I didn't know what was happening with that, so.
Yeah.
If we can nail that down.
Well, we've got 40,000 budgeted for this current fiscal year and 40,000 for next. I don't know if we're gonna be at 80,000 over the course of the next. Right?
Yeah, I just didn't know, so I'm game to put in
Like,
whatever.
even if we were to reduce it, I actually had asked Ted last week, hey, I know a number of the counties that he's worked with do have some continuing work that they do. What does that scope look like? But yeah, I wonder just for
Did he say?
he hasn't said yet, but if we were at, potentially 10 grand less there on the professional services side, then we've got, the highest we've ever spent is 36,000 in advertising and publishing, but we've got 52. I didn't know if there's some.
There's some, we are really struggling with the courier and publication costs. They try to, if you ever look at the legal notices, they're doing a really great job of taking a lot more space than they ever had. And then the bill goes up, and then poor Lori, who doesn't actually do the work, but she tries to call them, and we try to get them to be more reasonable, but and they're just having a lot of issues. We get bounced literally all over the country now. When you try to a customer service person, it changes. Sometimes it's in Virginia, sometimes it's Arizona. And they don't know the Iowa rules. They don't know what we need. So I'm reluctant to cut that yet till some of that settles a bit, because we are paying, we're paying double for, and we have tried very hard to fight back and get them to put them in one column. We don't need this fancy picture with all this white space, because you pay a lot for white space.
Yep.
But it's just an ongoing battle all the time.
Are we required to still have 2 papers of record? So we have the Hudson Herald.
We do have the Hudson Herald. I don't know that we put much in it other than the budget and the annual financial report, and I don't know if that's how we're supposed to do it, honestly. It's been that way for quite some time. We saved a lot part of the savings was when the Port City paper stopped. That is saving us. So I can look at it again. I thought we might have a better sense by 27 what the heck's going up with Courier.
I mean, I know I've said it jokingly before, but I'm actually pretty serious now that I'd rather publish in the Northern Iowa than for the Courier.
Yeah, I don't think we get that choice, but yeah, it's a very frustrating.
Why don't we get that choice?
I was gonna say, we can look into it because it's usually a paper of general circulation. The question is whether it qualifies. And in fact, we determined a few years ago, it used to be that certain notices had to go in 3 papers based on our population. Problem is, we don't have 3 papers of general circulation, at least weekly anymore. We only have 2. I don't know about, admittedly, the Northern Iowa never occurred to me, but it might be general circulation for all I know. It's probably free for a lot of people too. So I don't know. It seems like this is right for an updated statute. It doesn't require publication in print anymore or something like that, because it's gotta be a lot harder in a smaller county, frankly.
Well, and how people consume news has changed since that statute, right?
Yep.
Us doubling that line potentially over the last 3 years is a lot. That's a lot for a little bit back.
Some things only require 1 paper, and in that case, we've been doing the Courier all the time. Just seemed like the obvious choice. I wasn't aware of these issues prior, but I was aware of the fact that we're having trouble, depending on who we're dealing with, and that's a going struggle.
So have we given you enough, Michelle, to make those different scenarios? Did you need a decision on non-bargaining, not decision, but did you need a number thrown for non-bargaining pay increases in elected officials? Or do you have those?
Anything you want to give me, I'll work with.
I know.
So what we budgeted
is the 3%.
For non-bargaining is 3%.
And also for us as well, right? You said, I think.
Well, yes and no. You're actually now, with the budget adjustments, you're in at the 10%.
At the 10, okay.
Yeah, before the budget adjustments, you're not. So we'll say if I have to change all the non-bargainings, that literally touches every department, so that
And are the non-bargaining
takes some time. It's in for 3%.
3, okay. And we're not splitting, the directors? That was the other, you presented with 2 options, correct, again?
Yeah, so this year we're still kind of doing that, because everybody
Yes.
has different across the board.
Yes.
So on average, most of our employees are probably like 3, but yeah.
Trying to make those
Guardians
adjustments correct.
been 3, directors 2.5. I mean, I wouldn't go up much if you did change that up or down much other than 0.25%.
Yeah, but that is it. I just want to make sure, so we've got something. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Amanda.
Is this the time to make a recommendation?
For
Certainly can, yeah.
It oh, you can talk about it, you mean, or just wait till you see the scenarios, but you just mean talk about it for sure?
I mean,
Or you could
I can
vote
give a
on what you wanna do.
recommendation at this point and just help Michelle with some numbers.
Oh, mhm.
As much as I appreciate the 10%, there's no way that I can accept or go along with that. But I do believe that the goal has been, I've done quite a bit of research this past week with asking Michelle 1,000 questions on this issue in particular. Trying to keep those department heads where we wanted and electeds, and trying to get them into the 90% column. That's what we've been shooting for. That would take at least a 6% increase. And so what I'm looking at right now is just saying for budgeting purposes, start at 7% because we can't work back up. If we can't get that 400,000 down further, then it may be more like the 6% what I'm thinking. But I want to start right now with 7% for those. The non-bargaining at 3.5, and then the directors at 3.5.
I'm sorry, so the numbers that were shared with us was 10% to get them to 90, right?
No, that took them to 5. Yeah, 95.
95. But you have, so what's tough is that we already know some are moving at like 3 to 4. Like I would say most, so then there's that, probably a 10% would get us to 90.
10% would get us to 90 once everybody else did their
Yes.
increases
Yeah,
as well.
and that's what, it is kind of a moving target, but yeah, even 7% would be on the higher end of what I'm seeing, but that's because we're behind in those areas, so.
Right. That's
But
a good
yeah.
point, I think it was last week.
You
If
can't
we-
get
if
that
we-
curve.
If we just do enough to get to where we're at, we're still gonna be back once everybody else does their.
That's why I say the 7% is at least keeping us closer to it than the 6%. But 10%, I don't see that being real acceptable for folks that we're responsible to.
When it comes to the number that we're sending to the state initially and providing us the most flexibility, I'd prefer to stay at the 10%. We can come back and talk about it later.
Yeah.
But I don't want to cut us at the knees if we're starting to see more and more, and that number, I think it is important for us to get 90%. So if we cap ourselves now, we aren't able to come back, and we might still be stuck at 87, 88.
Yeah, we don't get lower.
We can always lower, correct.
Correct.
So
Do we have an idea of how many other, in our group is already?
Like Lynn County, and yeah, so I think I shared a little bit of that. I don't think I've officially heard from like Scott, but they were in 3 to 4. Dallas's comp board said 10%, but she expected that to be more like 6. I think Lynn County is at 4, 3 to 4. Woodbury had some like higher ones for the deputy, or higher ones for the sheriff. I think 8 and 6 for like attorney and sheriff. And that's the other thing too. It doesn't have to be a flat. Like, so you can kind of gauge some things differently. You know, and we've got some newer elected officials too, so, you know, but you don't really get to base it off of that. It's a little different for department heads. Like, if you go and replace a department head who's had 20 years of experience, that range allows you to replace that department head at a lower. And we're finally at a great place with wages where we can do that. For so long, everybody was like 15% behind market, especially in leadership positions. So we've gained a lot of progress, and this is really just the last group. But yeah, I mean, that, I don't know if you can speak to, I guess, is there any rules, since they act as a comp board?
Thanks for asking that. I wondered that.
Can they reduce? They can't go above that. I mean, I don't know if they can or not. I guess they could.
Are you asking whether they can go above what?
Well, I said 10%, and then I said 5% for Brian, purely based off the data that is today.
Putting people at mark.
I don't think they're obligated
I think they
with
can
any of
say
those.
even.
The only restriction I'm absolutely aware of is the restriction relating to law enforcement and sheriff's pay. It seems, or I should just say sheriff's pay, there may be, have to go back and see how it relates on elected officials,
Sure.
but I don't think they're required to go in any particular direction just based, or in any particular amount, just based upon a recommendation.
And maybe if it would help to see where some of these will then land, just in general, that $463,000, overage that we're at. Because if there's some things that shift there that allow that to be easier to get to the 10%, I think maybe that's what Davis is, like that's.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at too, with the
Yeah.
7 to 6.
But, it's not, every year, it's kind of, this is a recommendation, you guys can, I don't expect you to accept 10% just because we said that.
Right.
It's just a night, but it also would, internal equity, external competitiveness would put us right where I feel what we should be. And that can be over a couple of years too, so.
Well, I looked at the history going back 10 years, and however, I would never imagine trying to govern on the backs of the workers. We also shouldn't be expecting electeds to be governed on their backs either. So that's where I recognize that 10%. It's gonna be a hard pill for some people to accept,
Sure.
but they don't understand how far behind we are either.
For us,
And then to me, that's kind of bargaining on people's backs, no matter what position they hold with the county.
And hopefully, I'd like to, where we are now, again, with almost, I think we're a lot more competitive in pay than we've ever been. And we're right where I think we should be across the whole, I do think those leadership positions are kind of reflective of where all the positions tend to be. So, it's just more, for me, an argument of like what you're doing internally equitable is important as much as competitive being competitive on the market end. But yeah, I mean, it is it's certainly, you look at the history of it, you probably put most counties and wages, and not even private employers. COVID really changed the whole market for pay pretty drastically these last few years. So it's just a matter of, again, those that I showed you there, I think 11 and 12, maybe some 10 of the top paid of those offices, and I'd like it to be like department heads where they're more like 7, 6, 8. So we'll have to look at it each year, and that's why we do this. So, yeah.
Not expecting you to give us this off the top of the head, but if you could at some point share what those non-bargaining, what percentage they're at overall. If they're at 90%, if they're at 95%, what our goal is.
Sure.
If you could share some of that with us, I think it would be helpful in the decision-making process.
And I think when we get that, kind of waiting for that, hopefully the data that we participated in with all the counties and cities that markets study to kind of, because I could go off of the study that was given to us a year ago. That data is already kind of aged because that was off of even the year prior. But yeah, I certainly could have some rough numbers. We'll see but I haven't heard any updates from when we entered all of our information. Then of course when we see the changes come in. So hoping the coming weeks we'll all know where non-bargaining's landed and
Sure.
yeah.
At least updating it based off of the old numbers once we.
And then the 3.5, so yeah, on average, there are some unions though that are getting us, 2.5. That's only conservation, but that's because we built in some steps, we moved people, and they were getting increases from that comp study a little bit earlier. And then we have some unions, like civilians are getting 3, I believe, this year over in the jail. So I guess 3.5 for non-bargaining is acceptable. 3.5 for directors, I just get a little because their wages are now larger. So then that percentage makes those increases larger, and I don't want to look at next year and go, oh, now we're all like slightly above market. It can happen, but I just want to be mindful of that. But these are pretty small. I mean, it's not like we're recommending a 5% or something. So those could work in that recommendation that Richie gave.
The average for the bargaining units right now for this 26 is 3.36%.
I think with the sergeants, it's 3.44. Because
Oh yeah, that's new contracting on this.
Yep, I forgot to include that in my sales.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're okay with providing us a little bit more information, but updated, you said with that?
Yeah, I can give you at least the average of the unions again, and then I can see as I'll ask the other counties where they're at and go from there.
So we need to, we have a number for community, I was just looking at that checklist of what we needed to have decisions made on the community funding levels. Do you have anything built into that? For community funding?
I have what?
Have some number plugged into community funding levels?
I have 100,000 plus 50,000 for the food bank, and then the 25 for cattle congress that's on the budget adjustment.
Yeah. So that's okay to leave that for now and go from there?
I mean, last year we did 300,000 funded from
I can't remember if it was 250 or 350.
Because I don't want to see us drop it from 300,000 to 100,000. That money makes a lot of difference to a lot of organizations and communities.
I'm fine with that, I was just gonna say, but that always seems to me we don't have budget, departments that cut budgets and then keep community funding high. But I just want something to look at, so we can take a look at it and see where we're at and where the
I
tax.
agree with you on that.
It's just like, let's look. Does that give you enough information, Michelle, to get back to us with numbers? Or was there something more you need?
Want to increase the community funding?
Just give us both scenarios, or I don't know,
Well,
give us two
I
or.
mean, they're not really scenarios necessarily, because we're talking about 100,000 from general fund, plus the 25 and 50, right? So a total of 175 when you factor in two commitments we're entering in. And then what you're saying is out of reserves, additional dollars. You're not saying come to the.
Oh,
three.
what are reserves for the 250?
Yeah, and I thought that last year we funded 300 out of reserves for the community, and then the 50,000 food bank was in the levy.
I don't remember. I remember the 250 amount, I remember the 50 for food bank, but I couldn't.
I thought, what was in my head was 250 out of
250
reserves,
yeah,
100 for CBD, and then 50 for food bank. So if we could maybe get some clarification on where we've been there.
The 250 was the community.
The 250 out of reserves was.
Yeah, but that was the community.
Earmarked for community, but we did have 100 in the budget for, so
250, got it. Yeah.
We get an idea of what's been going on the last several years, not just last year, but maybe go back 2-3 years.
Of
community funding?
Community funding.
The projects you mean, or which, what do you?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, us coming in new, we kind of have an idea of where the money's gone, how much each year.
Yeah.
So we got some kind of benchmark to look at for history.
Yep, sure. Yep, not us, we're
Yeah,
providing it.
it's easy for me to say yeah.
Yeah. Kathy, I have a question for you. One thing that's not in here, and Michelle too, was your project. Do we need a meeting on that, or are we kind of comfortable with anything that we need for your projects budgeted, like engineering costs or whatever? Or?
Are you talking about the building or?
The building, the $7 million building.
We budgeted in FY '25, we have some professional services.
Yeah.
We'd like to spend before the end of June.
Yeah.
This year, and in FY & we do have some professional services as well.
Yeah.
We have been talking a little bit more with Michelle about a bond schedule or how to maybe this could all be doable, but I don't think we have anything yet.
Okay, great.
That'd be something.
Well, we've talked to, we have a plan for how much they have that they could put toward a building, and I have built in a $6 million bond issue into the debt service plan that I've showed you. It's not until maybe 27, 28, because we've got to design it, you've got to have a referendum, there's stuff we have to do first, but I think we've done what we need to do for right now.
Okay, that's all, that was just, one of those questions kind of hanging out there, needing to do something.
Do we got a date when we can run the referendum then? Idea, the window?
Maybe November of 2026.
Okay.
So is there a timeline, that you're pretty comfortable with, and that you could share with us?
Do we think that November 26th timeline for a referendum is doable?
Well, I just meant, you said there's several things we have to do for the referendum, for the funding streams, and we're good with that, but I just thought what the timeline is for us to be doing.
And
You put thought
Yeah,
into
if
it.
there's a thought process there.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to get it on paper, and if it's on paper, it'd be nice to see it.
Yeah.
I think a work session, because I haven't been through a referendum, I think the last one was the radio towers.
Oh.
Or was that even, I can't remember, but
That didn't,
but
a referendum.
I haven't been through one, so I'd be interested in one in knowing what the
Yeah.
limitations are in terms of advocacy that the county can do for it and all that kind of stuff. And what, yeah, just really the mechanisms of what's on.
It's gonna require some information on the public, even if we can. I don't know if we can like advertise and do that type of thing.
So I think we can definitely do that. I don't know if we need to do it for the end of April, for example.
Yeah.
No, but I just meant we haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Yep.
For a plan, so that'd be helpful, but yeah.
Yeah, we not need to talk to Karen quite a bit, and maybe we should commit to doing something maybe in April after more budget work has been done, since it's not an emergent thing, like Michelle said, we do have a plan in mind that we feel we've got some numbers for FY '26, and we didn't really do anything more than that than we have in FY '26. But we can talk about a plan, and we would like to talk about that, but maybe after we're done with the budget, a more appropriate time.
Sure.
Me?
Thanks. Okay, thank you. Yeah, building looming up.
I got it, buddy. Do we have any report, anything else on budget stuff before we do the next agenda item? We got 2 more minutes till we make it till noon. We can.
I can fill that.
Minor report on watershed stuff, not particularly related to one particular watershed management authority, but you know, there's been a lot of shakeup on conservation funding at the federal level, and so I think we might see a big negative impact to a lot of the momentum that's been happening in flood resiliency, infrastructure, and nutrient reduction, and so it's just something to be aware of.
We had the conference board hearing last week with DJ and reviewed the assessor's budget. Appointed several members, one was a renewal and one's a new one for the board of review. Thursday evening, I was able to attend the conservation board meeting and meet the board members there. Had a great visit with that. I'm really impressed by the responsibility of the group and their deep commitment to serving on that board. Just so folks know, Friday I attended a required hearing with the city of Waterloo and allowing a new project to be built in the urban renewal plan area. I voiced my concerns about the additional projects being put into TIF areas and how it's affecting the county and funding for the county. I do expect additional conversations and meetings to happen from that meeting. And I don't know, I think probably within the next couple of weeks. I'm just, again, very concerned this past week, diving into the numbers, bothering Michelle constantly with questions. And Justin and I had a couple hours with Michelle last week, learning more about this and trying to make sure we're knowing what's going on. But that's one of the things that's very glaring is the limited growth that the county has and, from the TRIF. So I want to know more. What else we can do?
I second that.
All right. Yep, we're new. Any other additional reports? Otherwise, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Meeting adjourns.